for more time for them to complete the petition. And I thought that it would be important for you to give direction on how much more time you
the invitations to meet on Tuesday. As to the Honorable CTNA, I hope that by the close of next week or a week after, we'll mention the matter. They will have concluded what they are doing to bring a report to the House. I know that that committee has a lot of backlog, but I was briefed today that they have improved and increased their speed in processing petitions in a manner that is unprecedented, and they are churning out reports that will be coming to the House. So members who have presented petitions on behalf of other Kenyans, when those reports come, you know we are not obligated to debate them. You need to go through them, and if there are any issues you wish to raise, you bring it to the attention of the Speaker, and I'll accommodate you. Thank you. Before we call the next order, honorable members, allow me to acknowledge the following in the public gallery: EAPC church pastors from Runyenjes in Embu and Koiwa Central Secondary School from Mukonoin in Bomet. I've been requested by the Honorable Karemba to welcome his constituents from Embu. I give you 2 minutes, Honorable Karemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to welcome the clergy from the East Africa Pentecostal churches in Kenya. And I am very delighted, Honorable Speaker, to have these members of the clergy here, led by one Right Reverend Bishop John Jeru, who was once my Sunday school teacher, but has now become the general overseer of the church. Honorable Speaker, they have come at a time when we are having a doctor's strike, and their entry to Parliament has been obstructed. So it has taken them a little longer to get to this place. But I am sure, Honorable Speaker, that by them getting in here, things will never be the same again. I know them. I know how much they pray, and they're going to pray over this issue. And I am sure soon and very soon we are going to have a solution to the ongoing doctor strike. So, Honorable Speaker, I wish to thank you for the opportunity to welcome them. They have been very important in the service to humanity, and we have partnered with them long enough to offer services to our people. And we meet every so often to ensure that our people are properly taken care of, both spiritually and also politically. So thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Karemba. Next order.
Order number 12, the National Disaster Risk Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2023, second reading, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, is Honorable Andrew Okwome in the House? My record shows that he had 9 minutes to go. Is he in the House? Position forfeited. Now, honorable members, I see the screen is full with Honorable Ounda at the top. Is it to debate this bill, or you are there for something else? Give Ounda the mic.
Mr. Honorable Speaker, I also welcome you back from the short recess.
Yes.
I had already made my contribution on this bill,
Yes.
so I leave it for somebody else to continue. I already made my contribution.
Honorable, just hold on. Honorable members, if you are on the screen, it's very good. You have now been wiped out. So if you want to speak to this bill, now you can log in. Oundo, proceed.
I had already made a contribution to this bill. That's why I'm logging out, Chair.
You had
Speaker.
already made a contribution?
Yes, yes.
Why were you top on the list on my screen?
Well, probably they just like me, Honorable Speaker. It's not my mistake.
Honorable Geoffrey Ruku.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to contribute or to support this bill as far as the National Disaster Risk Management Bill is concerned. Mr. Speaker, we realize this country has witnessed a number of disasters, and one of the problems which we have always faced when we have a national disaster is mobilization of resources to mitigate deadly outcomes. And mostly we have disasters such as drought. At the moment, we are witnessing France, as well as terror attacks. So this bill will seek to ensure we extend mobilization of resources so that in case of drought, many families and lives are not lost. In case of France, we ensure there is immediate mobilization of resources to take care of France. Also, we have seen terror attacks in this country, but we are fortunate enough at the moment, we have stayed for quite a number of years without any terror attack. And we thank our security agencies for the good work they are doing. But in case of a terror attack, Mr. Speaker, we need a proper law in place to ensure there is quick mobilization of resources to ensure it is well taken care of. Also, Mr. Speaker, the formalization of ensuring there's proper public-private partnership in case of a disaster. When we have a disaster, Mr. Speaker, there are always consequences which may need in future to be mitigated so that the impact of that disaster may not stay with us for ages. And therefore, a situation where we may want to have public-private partnership, this bill is bringing in such a kind of a model which can be adopted to ensure there is a proper formulation of a public-private partnership. Also, Mr. Speaker, we know that disasters, there's loss of life, there's loss of property. This bill will ensure that there will be less, or there will be reduction of loss of life and property occasioned by disasters such as France, such as drought, and such as the terror attack. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a good bill which is looking into the posterity of our nation, and that's why I do support. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Beatrice Elachi. Honorable Undo, you said you had already spoken on this bill.
Thank you, Mr.
You've logged in again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this bill. And Mr. Speaker, just to speak on the perennial disasters that we normally find ourselves, especially in Nairobi. And one of them being indeed now the floods that we have. And when you look at the memorandum of objects, Mr. Speaker, the bill it establishes the Intergovernmental Council on Disaster Risk Management and the National Risk Management Authority to ensure that there is coordination of disaster risk management issues at the national and county level. But it also says in one of the articles, Mr. Speaker, that the president may, and I'm wondering, may, when there is a disaster, why would the president may? The president shall should be the word that we need to use. Because when we are talking of disasters, Mr. Speaker, that is the time now where we need the national government to come in. Because when you look at how county governments are structured today, Mr. Speaker, and any disaster that happens, even just the recent one, that we had a flash rain on a Sunday night and the whole thing goes into disaster, Mr. Speaker, you find that the counties will take more than 10 hours to come and even just support a very simple thing that needs to be done. And so if you tell me in disaster time that now the national government should not come in, then that one we will have serious challenges in this country. We've seen disasters in Mandera, we've seen what has happened there, either in drought or in floods, or even just buildings coming down. So one of the things we should be asking ourselves, as much as the bill looks at the shared functions and it says this is a shared function between the national and county government, I think, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure this is a more function of the national government. What the county can only come and do to support is to ensure they avail not resources of money, but manpower. But resources must come from the national government, just the way in the US when they have a national disaster. It is the federal government that comes in to stand with the people. Mr. Speaker, the other thing, Kenyans don't know when they are in disaster about county or national. So why can't we just tie up the bill and just say when there is serious disaster, it is the national government to take responsibility? And Mr. Speaker, when you look at part 1 of the bill, which contains the preliminary provisions, but then when you move down, you ask yourself, this council of intergovernmental, is it a council now where you bring us again the national team, which is already there, plus the county, or we get people who are expertise, who understand how to deal with disaster? The other day I looked at Thailand, Mr. Speaker, and they had an earthquake. And everyone in the world was shocked in how they managed that disaster. And the next morning when people were waking up, they had cleared even the bodies. They were now just removing those who were stuck and everything. So even as we speak at this, we must know as a country, we are never ready on any disaster. We are never ready. We now find ourselves in disaster is when we wake up and realize disaster is happening. So for me, the first thing, we must do the simple things that create now disaster. Like now, we know why we have floods in Nairobi. It's because the drainages are blocked. And so who are those responsible in ensuring, first of all, we have drainage, second, they are unblocked? The county has to just look at it, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that comes in at the right time, yes, but it's a bill we need to really ask ourselves, because I can see many of the functions sought to go back to the counties, and yet we are saying the counties do not have capacity for now. So, Mr. Speaker, even as we support this bill, there is need for us to tidy up a lot of the things that have been put. And one of the things we are saying, for example, the office of a member of a county committee shall become, that was when they are becoming vacant. But this county committee that we are putting, Mr. Speaker, if now we already have, how do we ensure, first of all, they are empowered? And so we must ask ourselves where the national government is, because I can see the county committee, and when you hear what the national government is coming to do, then you realize this is a function you have ensured, skewed it more to the counties, yet we know very well they don't have money to deal with these disasters. The thing that counties deal with mostly, Mr. Speaker, in their disaster is when they are looking for unga to buy for the people who are hungry, sometimes mabati. But these tough things that come, and God forbid, the way we are doing all these things in Nairobi, the housing and all that, if anything happens, and with this rain, the way it is raining every day, Mr. Speaker, we have to be very serious when we are saying we want this function to be with the county. So for me, Mr. Speaker, I propose that when we come to really the committee of the whole, we need to look at how do we up and ensure the national government takes control of more of these disasters than the county governments. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you, Member for Dagoretti. Timothy Toroitich, Marakwet West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important motion on bill on national disaster risk management. Honorable Speaker, under the Constitution, disaster management is a function of the county government. But Honorable Speaker, if you read the fourth schedule, it suggests that this function is a shared function. And Honorable Speaker, it is prudent that we set up a proper legal and institutional framework to manage disaster in this country. Honorable Speaker, whenever there is disaster in this country, what normally happens is that the county government allocates money. The national government allocates money to the county governments, but this money has never been utilized to meet its intended purpose. Honorable Speaker, the formation of the formation of what you call intergovernmental council to be able to oversee the funds that have been channeled to the county government is, for me, a fundamental way of solving issues of disaster in this country. Honorable Speaker, disaster cannot be said to belong to either the national government or the county government. When a disaster strikes, the people who are affected do not belong to the national government, do not belong to the county government. Honorable Speaker, these are the residents of this country. They are those who occupy Kenya, and therefore, the national government and the county government must be able to sit down and be able to resolve the challenges faced by people without selecting whether it is a national government and or a county government. Honorable Speaker, what is happening now is that this matter, the issues of disasters in this country, as we speak, is purely the purpose of a county government. Honorable Speaker, in my opinion, when it comes to the review of our constitution, which must ultimately come in the near future, this function should and must be transferred fully to the national government. Honorable Speaker, in this country, under Article 91 of the Constitution, the county governments are charged with making laws in certain devolved functions. Honorable Speaker, there is a problem because of what you call cross-border legislations. Honorable Speaker, since this matter is devolved, you find that already 47 county governments have made various legislations which sometimes are conflicting. Honorable Speaker, we must have a cross-border legislation. Honorable Speaker, the only way which you can have a cross-county legislation is establishing a national legal framework, which we are doing today, so that we provide a uniform legislation that guides the 47 county governments. Honorable Speaker, we have a challenge in this country in terms of conflict of legislations that are being channeled by county assemblies for the reason that certain functions are devolved. So, Honorable Speaker, we must think as a country that if a function is shared between the national government and between the national government and the county government, then there must be a uniform set of law that provides very clearly that this function is shared, and for that reason, we do not have what you call conflict of legislations which may bring issues. Honorable Speaker, we have challenges. For example, I had a chance to work in the county government, in the County Assembly of Elgeyo Marakwet. Honorable Speaker, I am one of the drafters of the Elgeyo Marakwet County Assembly legislation on disaster management. But, Honorable Speaker, as I was drafting that legislation, I realized that there was a problem because where I was as the legal counsel acting for the County Assembly of Elgeyo Marakwet at that time, I realized that my neighboring county, which is Uasin Gishu County government, had also had a similar legislation on the issue of disaster. Honorable Speaker, for example, if at that period of time, this other county do not have enough facilities, then it means the neighboring county must be able to assist another county in terms of facilities. Honorable Speaker, if we do not have a uniform legislation, if we do not have an authority which governs both the national government and the county government in our council, which is intergovernmental, then you may realize that another county may suffer at the expense of another county. So, Honorable Speaker, I rise, I support this legislation and pray that this authority that has been established will serve its intended purpose as was envisaged, as was provided for in the Constitution. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I have read the functions of this particular intergovernmental council, which has been provided under Clause 6 of the bill. Honorable Speaker, one of the functions of this intergovernmental council is to advise and make recommendations to the cabinet and the summit. Honorable Speaker, whenever there is an emergency, whenever there is a disaster, the cabinet must be notified and shall be notified by this council, so that county governments, whenever there is a disaster in a particular county, the county governments cannot make decisions without involving the national government. For me, Honorable Speaker, that is a plus. Honorable Speaker, number two, also, this intergovernmental council shall be able to provide policy direction and approve plans on all activities related to disaster risk management. Honorable Speaker, as I've said, the disaster cannot belong to a particular county. When a disaster strikes, it affects our citizens. It affects Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, therefore, there must be a specific policy direction that is approved by that particular council. Honorable Speaker, if you look at it further, it is also to receive and consider and make decisions based on reports and recommendations. Honorable Speaker, this House makes certain policy recommendations that there must be a council that approves that authority. Honorable Speaker, I have read the bill. That council must be one that serves both levels of government and therefore is entitled to make that particular. Honorable Speaker, finally, that authority, that council also reports to the cabinet. Honorable Speaker, the cabinet, in terms of policy directives, all policies that affect government must be approved at the cabinet level. So, Honorable Speaker, that particular council ensures that decisions relating or policies relating to disaster management are approved by the cabinet. Honorable Speaker, as I finish, I commend the direction we have taken as a country. I commend the direction we have taken as a House, that, Honorable Speaker, when a matter is shared between the national government and the county government, then as a House, we must sit down, we scrutinize the fourth schedule so that we do not have what you call conflict of legislations emanating from our county assemblies. We must have a uniform set of laws that governs the 47 counties in this country to avoid conflict of legislation and conflict of representation in various cadres. Honorable Speaker, I rise, I support this bill. When it comes to the committee of the whole House, I will propose the necessary amendments so that we can be able to strengthen the provisions of this particular proposed legislation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Timothy. Honorable members, order. Before I give the next speaker, allow me to recognize in the speakers and public gallery students, and I believe with teachers from Ogande Girls High School, Homa Bay Town in Homa Bay. I've been requested by the Honorable TJ Kajwang to welcome the students. I give you 1 minute, TJ, because it's in the middle of debate.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for asking me to welcome a huge delegation from Ogande Girls Secondary School, 300 girls visiting us. We have had delegations of students visiting us, but we have not had 300 students coming in one delegation. These are fourth formers, history students, as you see them, brilliant and bright. And on behalf of their member, Honorable George Opondo Kaloma, I want to welcome them to this house, that they have an opportunity to see the speaker himself and the house has assembled. This should give them inspiration that in a few months coming, these young people should be doctors that you were talking about this morning. These young people should, very few should be lawyers, and none should be a politician, but most of them should be engineers. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Honorable Gideon Mulyungi, Mwingi Central. Gideon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this very important bill, the National Disaster Risk Management Bill. Mr. Speaker, there has been a problem in Kenya. Whenever we are faced with a disaster, the coordination of responses is disjointed. And in most cases, we are mainly reactive and not reactive. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support that we establish the Intergovernmental Council on Disaster Management and the National Disaster Risk Management Authority at both the levels of government, both at the national government and the county government. Because in most cases, the county government does not know what the national government is doing, and also the national government does not know what the county government is doing. Mr. Speaker, there has been in the past many disasters witnessed in Kenya. And some of them, they just happen and nothing happens in terms of responses. If I give an example, Mr. Speaker, when we were attacked by terrorists at the Westgate Mall, Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of hues and cries all over, and the coordination was not well done. And therefore, if there is a standing authority, a standing committee that is prepared and on a day-to-day basis deals with the disaster and nothing else, in my view, I think the country will be moving in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, as we gather here in this house, the gate of parliament is closed by Mendix because of a problem that has arisen. And Mr. Speaker, I consider this one as a disaster because many Kenyans are dying in hospitals because of lack of doctors. And an authority like this one, which prepares for such kind of cases, will come in handy to deal with cases of disasters, because what is happening in our hospitals now is a disaster. Mr. Speaker, the other day we witnessed El Nino rains all over Kenya, and many roads were destroyed. And there has been no intervention at all in terms of repairing most of those roads. Some of them are trunk roads, some of them are feeder roads. And in a situation whereby we have this kind of an authority and an apex coordination committee, it will deal with disconnected roads all over the country whenever those kind of emergencies happens. Mr. Speaker, also we are witnessing a lot of increased level of road carnage. And Mr. Speaker, a situation like this one can be addressed by an authority like this one, which deals with the emergencies of road carnage. Mr. Speaker, we have also in the past witnessed increased high cost of living, farming in the northern frontiers and also in the counties in Ukambani, where relief food is being distributed all over the counties. And Mr. Speaker, an authority like this one will prepare itself to deal with such kind of emergencies. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, I want to support this on behalf of the people of Mwingi, that we establish this disaster risk management committee and authority so that it can deal with the disasters in Kenya. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert Basil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill on very many reasons. We need to acknowledge that disasters such as floods, famine, fire, and diseases disrupt functioning of community, more so increase vulnerabilities. Mr. Speaker, one of the key reasons why I support this bill is because disasters strike without any particular warning, and it's important to cushion our people from loss of life and properties. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we need to equip our people with the right skills and training. And having a fund to support training and capacity building is very essential and is one of the reasons why I support this particular bill. Number three, Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure our people recover better. We call it building back better. And this can only be facilitated when we have a fund that can be able to support such an initiative. Number four, Mr. Speaker, a proper response to disaster issues or the destruction caused by disasters is important. And this particular fund will support response to disasters. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I add my voice to support the bill. Number five, Mr. Speaker, we need to understand that although disaster management is a shared responsibility between the county government and the national government, the issues to do with the capacity of county government to manage disaster, more so the fund for disaster response, is questionable. And that's why, as a house, when we are going to be making an amendment to this bill, we need to agree where to sit this particular fund so that at least we bestow or we place the fund to an authority or a government with the right capacity, and no doubt that is the national government that will be able to manage the fund and make sure it is properly utilized. So, Mr. Speaker, now I can see Madam Speaker, I do say that with the due consideration, and having looked to the important function this particular fund is going to play, I fully support the bill, and I do applause the move of the bill, who is the leader of majority, Honorable Chungwa, for bringing the bill, which is very timely, considering now we are times of rains, and we are likely to witness floods, which are going to cause destructions. And more so when you hear floods, we can't talk or we can't exonerate waterborne diseases like cholera, which are likely to emerge because of the current rains and floods. So having a fund is important, and I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Teso South, Honorable Mary Emase.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill. Madam Speaker, this is a very good bill. From the onset, I support, because it is bringing together, creating a link between national government and county government on issues management of disaster. Because what we have seen in the past, Madam Speaker, flooding in many areas of this country, accidents name them, you find that there is no coordination. And response is delayed. And sometimes these monies, when they are sent to the county governments, because it's a devolved function to deal with the issues of disaster, sometimes the money, there are issues of accountability in respect to the management of these resources. So when I see that there will be a disaster committee in every county that onboards all important stakeholders, like the Red Cross, St. John's Ambulance, county commissioner, county commander, the governor, and all stakeholders within the county. And this particular council will just be focusing and dedicating and putting all its efforts towards management of disaster. Then, Honorable Speaker, I foresee a situation where we're going to have proper management and quick responses to addressing or mitigating issues around a disaster. So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member, Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this particular bill because, Honorable Speaker, I actually believe that this bill has come to the House at the right time. And I think it's very progressive because in the past, we've always been dealing with disaster issues in this country with a knee-jerk reaction. We wait until a disaster occurs, and then we quickly look for a solution that only solves the problem at that particular time, or in some instances doesn't even solve it. And Honorable Speaker, when I say this, I'm just thinking back, reflecting back to the last 2 weeks, when we had a situation where the expressway was flooded and we could not be able to access it. And yet, if we had such an authority within the county of Nairobi, they would have been able to actually analyze situations based on historical data that we have to be able to know whether or not something is going to happen or preempt issues that are going to happen. Honorable Speaker, especially during a time when we have so many climate change issues, and the climate change issues that we have range from different counties, and different counties experience different types of issues. Like, for example, Honorable Speaker, when I speak about my county in Nyamira, the disasters and risk management issues that are in that county would probably be very different from another county like Mombasa. And so having these particular authorities customized to the specific counties is very progressive. And Honorable Speaker, I want to also believe that once this is established, that the people who will be part of these particular authorities will be able to go back into the history of the different types of disasters, the different types of risk associated with the areas that they govern, so that they can be able to actually customize them according to their areas. Honorable Speaker, of particular interest for me is part 3 of the bill, where it talks about classification of disaster plans and electronic information system. And why I like this, Honorable Speaker, is because with time and the fact that we are very much in the technological space, we need to actually customize our bills to be able to bring in an aspect of IT. Because, Honorable Speaker, without data, you will not be able to even have a clear view of what you're dealing with. You need data, Honorable Speaker, for you to be able to even make a comprehensive report, and for you to be able to even speak to other people who you want to be able to assist as well. Honorable Speaker, I also like the part that in part 2 of part 3 of the electronic information system, that it also mentions that this data will be accessible to the public. And not only that, but that also they will ensure that Data Protection Act of 2019 is taken into consideration. Because, Honorable Speaker, again, for as much as we want our people to be able to access data, we must also safeguard them. But in having said that, we cannot safeguard ourselves too much to an extent that we are stifling innovation. And Honorable Speaker, I'd just like to throw a spanner in the works in terms of this particular bill, because I've gone through it, but I've not seen any aspects of AI. And what I'm talking about, Honorable Speaker, is, for example, the current issue we have with our fertilizer. If we had a drone-based system in this country that would have been able to quickly analyze the fertilizer that you're receiving, analyze the soils, figure out what the pH of the soils is, and be able to determine note to note in terms of what you want to actually put in different soils, then we'd not be having this kind of problems. And so I just want to urge all of us, when you're coming up with these very progressive bills like this particular one, we should also always include an aspect of AI, because artificial information, Honorable Speaker, is very important. We cannot ignore it anymore in this country, and it also just helps us to make our work easy. And so I just want to encourage the person who sponsored this bill, at the time of amendments, when the amendments come, and we bring in amendments that are relating to IT and information system, that they do allow us to bring in some of these progressive ideas. Honorable Speaker, with those very short remarks, I do support.
The Honorable Member for Kwanza, Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill. I think it's very important that we establish units or departments in both that can be able to correspond with whatever happens in the county. Currently, Madam Speaker, you see, and from the experience, at times you find something has happened in the county, and you find there's no spark up, either from the government or from the county government. So if we have set up a coordination, a departmental unit that will be able to deal with whatever disaster that we'll be able to have, you never know, one of which is, for example, we have these floods. The floods sometimes affect areas, and then of course you as a member of parliament, you don't know whether it should come to you, and you don't have that kind of money for emergency. When you involve the county government, they equally say they don't have that kind of thing. But if you have that disaster management unit to be able to assist, we have cases where, for example, a bridge is broken because of the flooding or whatever disaster it is. Madam Speaker, you find yourself in a very awkward situation. As a leader, you don't know who to refer to. Had a case, for example, of flood covering almost there were two wards. I didn't even know what to do, because when I called my counterpart, I called my governor, and he said, but where do I get the money from? I didn't even have that as well. So, Madam Speaker, this is quite appropriate, and I think what we should do is to have this risk management bill passed as soon as possible, so that you can be able to allocate whatever funds are going to be there and give the guidelines as to how to use that fund. Because of course, if you just put it there, it's so that you have, if there's any emergency, you have got the central government through the member of parliament or a women rep involved, plus of course the county government, so that it can be a secondary to the expenditure of such funds. Those risk management, Madam Speaker, risk management bill, as I see it here, is something very, very important, and I think I request this House to pass it yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, so that can be able to move faster and be able to deal with some of the disasters that actually occur without giving a warning. So I want to take this opportunity to support this, and I hope the House can have this, because we are members who are affected all the time. Even some of the small little things like a bridge or even a road. So you find that they are actually coming to you. And if you have this kind of funds, you can be able to see how much each side can spend. So I support this bill. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Sigor, Honorable Locha Kapong. Oh, yes, yes. I'm told you're the mover, but you have your card. So you can actually, yeah, pull it out. Okay, thank you. The Honorable Edith Nyenze, member for Kitui West.
Speaker, I would like to contribute to the next one. Thank you.
The Honorable member for Kisumu, Honorable Shakil Shabir.
Madam, I'm actually beaten. I was just trying to log in, so I'll be excused, please. I don't have a contribution at this moment.
The Honorable member for Vihiga, Honorable Beatrice Adagala.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute on this bill. On the onset, Madam Speaker, I'll support this bill before I even talk, because it has come at the right time, whereby we have several emergencies that take place in the country, and especially our counties. You'll find, like my county, there is a disaster, a school has burnt down, or anything like in the gold mines, they rush to the county woman MP looking for money to sponsor those kind of disasters. And Madam Speaker, in our kitty, as you all know, the women rep have no money to go towards such disasters. Like there was a case in one of the wards whereby the rains caused havoc, so many houses were blown away, and people look at you as the countwoman rep to go and give money for those kind of calamities, which we cannot afford to bear, Madam Speaker. So I think if this can be put into consideration, and also the county government plus the national government, we put our efforts together so that when we have we have a kit for this kind of disaster when it happens. Like right now, you are seeing floods all over, houses are being swept, and now we have it very rough as members of parliament, and especially the women reps, because everybody, when houses are swept, everybody tells the people, the women rep can do that, and the county governments, the governors keep quiet. So it means that we are not prepared as a county or a country for this kind of disaster. So this bill may cure what is needed, Madam Speaker, and I'm very sure I will support this with all my strength. We want to see something put into place and which can be managed very well, not like that scenario of where we were hearing of money being put aside for El Nino. You hear blame games here and there. Measures should be put in place whereby this fund, once it's been set aside, can be handled by a certain committee which can really assist, Madam Speaker. And if this is done, it will really assist us. Schools that get burnt all the time, floods that come all the time, the wind that blow away houses, because I'm very much affected, because when this happen, they always send to the women rep to get in charge to take care of such incidents, and we don't have funds for that. So, Madam Speaker, I really support this bill, and I support it. Thank you.
The Honorable Naomi Wako, member for Marsabit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important bill. Madam Speaker, anything to manage disaster that comes to us from time to time is something that we should all give support, and establishing a Council of Disaster Risk Management is the most important thing that we can do today, because from time to time, you see that we land into problems, especially like now when it is raining. It is in some areas, it is already, people are already displaced because of the floods. And especially in the areas that some of us come from, even the wind comes and blows off the schools, the roofs, and then even the houses. And most of the time we land into problems that we are not even prepared for. So if at the county level and at the national level, we have national disaster risk management bill, then that can guide and can help. Many are the times that we even lose people because of the disasters in different ways. The fire, sometimes some people can experience fire and they lose their homes, they lose their properties, and they lose even their lives. So the best thing that can help us is to have this bill in place so that we can be able to manage that. I support the bill because of composition of the board members, the qualified people who are to be there, so that in any board, then we have qualified people, we have people who are well experienced, so that they can hold the offices and have the right thing in place. The bill has taken care of different things, vacation of offices. It has also taken care of functions of the board. It has taken care of the powers of the board, and also identified or talks of the committees of the board and delegation of the board. All that ensures good care of the entire bill, and also what it does at the ground level. So, Madam Speaker, I am just supporting the bill and pray that many people will support and that this bill will be soon in place for implementation, because it will support Kenyans and help Kenyans who will run maybe into any disaster and who needs some support. Thank you.
Before we continue, I'm very proud to welcome the students from Little Lambs Primary School from my Naipoi constituency, Uasin Gishu County. You can stamp your feet for them. That's my constituency and the former school of my nephew, Brian Boss. You're welcome. On behalf of myself and the rest of Parliament, I welcome you to these proceedings. Thank you. The Honorable Member for Bondo, Honorable Gideon Ochanda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise to support the bill, I think there are three things that we need to look at very keenly. When we look at disaster, we look at the issue of emergencies, and we look at the issue of crisis. Now, I think these three things, we really have to either define them or to place them exactly where they belong and to be prepared for them. Because many times, sometimes even the kind of debate that we are having around here now, Madam Speaker, is indicating a disaster as a crisis. But then there are many times that we also must look at disaster as an emergency. And when you look at disaster as an emergency, the level of preparedness in this country is almost zero. Emergency or disaster does not go with bureaucracy. And what we have, and even some of the proposals that we are talking about, are still creating bureaucratic arrangements. You're still talking about a council, you are still talking about arrangements in terms of how to address issues of emergency or issues of disaster, Madam Speaker. So in my view, we have to really rethink as a nation in terms of how we want to look at disaster. There are situations like when you look at the kind of bureaucracy or levels of approvals that you need to respond to a disaster. I think sometimes they are very unnecessary. I remember a situation arose here one time where there were people who were stuck in the lake because of hyacinth. And getting a response, because we wanted a chopper just to airlift some 2 or 3 people. Imagine the guys are stuck in waters and we are told you must write to some disaster committee in Eldoret, or you must write to somebody in charge of the police system for purposes of emergency. For how long do you look at this thing, look at in terms of raising a letter to get to an office, to have a council sit down to approve that this disaster is actually a disaster that requires a response? So, Madam Speaker, we really have to think of this generally. And when we think of it, we must look at the proper definition of these things, because sometimes we are trying to place arrangements for emergencies, yet we don't place arrangements for crises that even we are forewarned. Like when we are talking about disaster in terms of flooding now, these ones we are forewarned. They can't be a disaster anymore. When you are talking about drought, we are many times forewarned. There are signals that are sent. So when we are looking at that, we don't need to look at it as a disaster. We need to look at it in terms of how well are we prepared for purposes of signals, because that is not really that's not a disaster in my view. That's a crisis in waiting, and we are forewarned. We are told that no, this is likely to happen. We are now told that rains are going to be with us here until June, for example. The level of preparedness, why do we want the normal bureaucracy to address a crisis? Because these are some of the things that, as we are forewarned, we really now need to put arrangements that can take care of issues of crisis, but not issues of disaster. So, but when you look at it as a disaster in the direction of an emergency, some of these bureaucracies are unnecessary. We need spot-on reporting system that can respond to when there are emergencies. And I think that's where some of the members, in my view, are either taking disasters to be crises which you need to prepare, or some are taking disaster as emergencies. But if you look at them as emergencies, we are less prepared as a nation. Emergencies don't need bureaucracy. Emergencies need spot-on responses, and this is a structure that must be placed outside the arrangements for crisis. Crises that we are forewarned, crises that indicators are clearly there that they are going to take place. So those ones require an arrangement that we don't try to put together in terms of disaster management, Madam Speaker. And then again, issues of disaster sometimes require immediate low-level responses. We are constantly talking about national, that we don't need to have a national council. How do you respond to a disaster in a village through a national council? How do you respond to small little disasters that happen in a school or happen in a setup in the communities, and you want to look at a national office, a national agency, or a national bureaucracy to respond to them, Madam Speaker? So in my view, immediately we separate the issues of crisis from disaster and from emergencies is when we'll be establishing proper infrastructure for responding to them, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Daniel Kirito, member for Igembe Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving this opportunity to add my voice to this very important bill. Madam Speaker, the National Disaster Management Authority will be very crucial and very important agency in this country. Madam Speaker, the disasters that have been falling in this country have caused us a lot of damages and a lot of losses. Madam Speaker, the main essence of this agency is mostly on prevention. This country has become a country of age, and it will be very embarrassing whereby we are made our pants down by disasters without being prepared. Madam Speaker, for example, the flooding, the country should be prepared and have policies on place and know when the rains will be excess so that you can be in a position even to collect the floods and use that rain in future for other for useful purposes. Madam Speaker, the country cannot afford to be losing year in, year out through these floods. Madam Speaker, we have cases of burning of schools, burning of properties, whereby in most cases you find electricity which have been faultily placed. We should be in a position to be prepared properly to be able to avoid such unnecessary damages and losses. So if we are able to plan effectively and before these disasters come, we can save a lot of funds which are which end up being destroyed through these disasters. Madam Speaker, we have some other disasters. Even this rustling of cattle should be considered as a disaster in this country, because you find a community, a family that has used all their resources to put up a farm and put up animals. The rustlers come and steal them. That one also should be considered as a disaster, and the organization should also take care of that to know how to compensate those who will be losing their animals. So in short, Madam Speaker, I'm supporting this bill, and I think we should be prepared earlier enough so that we can be able to counter these disasters beforehand. And it will be very embarrassing for a country like Kenya, which has gone miles in technology advancement, not to be in a position to detect disasters in time before they strike. And most of these disasters are what, for example, the flooding and the burning of some institutions are things that should be early enough detected. The authority from the county level will be very vital, because in some counties you find they don't have even fire extinguishers, even machines to put out fire are not in place. Therefore, this agency management will be having those equipments in place so that you can fight those disasters in time before more destructions are done. We also need the post-disaster rehabilitations. There are communities that have earned all their properties lost in these disasters. We need counseling centers where those who have been affected can be taken through counseling so that they can continue with their lives after the disasters. Because some end up losing everything, they lose their lives. Others end up even hanging themselves after realizing that they've lost everything. So after the post-disaster rehabilitation should be handled properly, whereby you can have counseling centers for the affected members of the community. We also have the openness and the management of the resources, which will be managed by authority, by the team, and it will be very important that whatever is given to run this the disaster management, there will be openness and accountability, and that will go very far in making sure that the real targets and areas that have been affected have thoroughly been taken care of, and the affected are served. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support.
The Honorable Member for Lunga, Honorable Magale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving this chance to contribute on this very crucial bill. And I want to say on the onset that I support the bill because it is really touching on very crucial matter, which of course has been mishandled by the fact that always we were saying that disaster is devolved. Now, when anything happens in the counties and all over the country, then it becomes a blame game. But then more so, what makes me to be very curious about this bill is that there's a special team, which maybe it will be at the national level, but I will wish to suggest that as much as we would wish to have the team, whether an authority or whatever name it will be given, but let that team be cascaded down to the counties and even to the wards so that the response can be so quick to ensure that the affected people around the county or in the wherever they'll be getting the response very quickly and be salvaged. But again, I want to say that even the classification of disasters, like the wild animals, let me say in my area where I come from, sometimes the farmers are being affected in one way or the other. The jumbos or elephants come into their farms, destroy the farm products or the produce, and then in one night, the whole sub-county or the whole village doesn't have or it's affected by the wild animals. Then this should also be classified as also disaster, but more to emphasize on the issue of the commonly known disasters like floods, many other disasters. I wish to say that when it happens, then the coordination should be actually from the grassroots, as I've earlier said, that the committee which should be formed should emanate from the village level coming up. So the coordination should be in that the member of parliament, the women rep, the MCS, and any other important leader who is actually affected or in charge of the affected area should be put into consideration, because we don't want a situation where a disaster has taken place, then now it becomes phone calls, and whoever is being called, he doesn't know where to start and how to do it. There should be a very important communication strategy, whereas everybody will be brought on board and be responsible. Because as we speak today, it is either the county commissioner or the governor who is supposed to take responsibility. But I wish to state here that the member of parliament in this case are always being blamed that the roads, the bridges, and all these disasters which take place, the member of parliament and the women rep, so to say, are the ones who are affected first. So as we form the authority or whatever organ which will be formed to address this issue, then I would propose that either a representative of the MP and the member of the women rep be in those committees. And I will submit and to say that I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member John Makali, member for Kandui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to also weigh in on this particular bill. At the outset, Madam Speaker, I will say I actually support the bill wholeheartedly. Schedule 4 of our Constitution actually grants the power to manage and control disasters to our county governments. Equally, Schedule 5 gives national government also powers to control issues related to disasters. So this bill, Madam Speaker, comes in at a very handy stage to provide a legal framework for the management of disasters, risks, and emergencies. Madam Speaker, in the past, we have had floods, we have had droughts, we have had animals dying, we have had many risks in our respective constituencies and counties. But ultimately, we have not had a legal framework that provides for the coordination and management of risks and disasters as and when they occur. So, Madam Speaker, this bill, whose object is basically to provide a legal framework for the coordination of disaster and risk management activities both at the national level and at the county level, is appropriate and is welcome at this particular stage. Of critical concern and importance in this particular bill is the creation of an authority that will be able to coordinate all these activities relating to droughts, disasters that happen and occur in our constituencies, counties, and the country at large. This authority that is created will be able to harness information, coordinate all the activities, so that we do not approach the issue of disasters and risk in an uncoordinated manner like we have been doing in the past, because there has been no legal framework. So this particular bill comes in to fill a lacuna that has been existing in our laws, the absence of a legal framework. We keep on saying, Madam Speaker, information is power. If we look at Chapter 3 of this particular bill, it sets up an electronic management system that has to give information, provide information to apprehend disasters that are supposed to come, to look at past events and be able to apprehend them so that we can be able to control them. So the bill is literally well-intentioned, Madam Speaker. In the recent past, we have had disasters that have come, and we have not really managed them very well. We have had funds allocated to them, but those funds have not been properly managed. They have become cash cows for some individuals who have taken disasters as an avenue to misappropriate funds. This bill has ample provisions that criminalize misappropriation of funds that have actually been set apart for management of disasters in our respective constituencies, wards, and counties. And of critical importance, Madam Speaker, Article 6 of our Constitution critically says that the county governments and the national governments shall consult and cooperate in the delivery of services to the citizen. This particular bill sets provisions for coordination between the national government and the county government in the management of disasters. During the Committee of the Whole House, Madam Speaker will be making some proposals to amend several provisions regarding the composition of these county committees, and the national committees will be able to deal with issues relating to disaster and risk, to include other provisions that will make this act more fulfilling in its objects. Madam Speaker, I entirely support this bill and urge that we pass it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Edith Nyanze, member for.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to hear my views on this bill. It seeks to establish a risk management authority, and I actually support it because it also seeks to establish a risk management fund, which will provide funds for risks and disaster, so that we as a country, we are prepared and also have a mitigation response in risk management matters. So it's actually a bill which has come at the right time to actually address some of the issues which have affected us as a country and which has caused a lot of death in our country. And with such, it also seeks to establish an authority, and with such an authority, we would have a central place where disasters can be reported, where emergencies can be reported, and it's even better because there is a risk management committee in the counties where the governor is the chair, and with such representation up to the counties, then it will be very easy to even report disasters, because from such committees, then they will be able to establish whether a risk is for the county to handle or whether it's a national disaster for the national government to handle. And in the past, the coordination has been blamed for slow response to crisis. The coordination has been blamed, but now with the establishment of such an authority and with the presence in the county, then the response will be very fast, and this will save lives. So it has come at the right time. But Madam Speaker, some of the disasters which occur every time, it should reach a time when they are no longer labeled, should not be labeled as disasters. Because if something comes every time, if there is flooding in a river every time, then we should come up with a solution, because you already know the problem. A solution of either building a bridge or coming up with a solution. Something like drought. This is something which we know if some areas will be, especially the ASO areas, will be affected. And with this risk management fund, with the funds, then what can be done is that when there is plenty of harvest, food can be stored, and so that when there is drought, such areas would be actually be provided with food. So with such a fund and with such an authority, then some of the risks should, with time, stop being disasters. With such a fund, something like fire, then we should have a fund where we can buy fire equipment, and also with a preparedness, we will be able to attack immediately and respond immediately so that we save lives. Madam Speaker, I know of a river River NCU, I know it's in Honorable Mulyungi's a place. It killed so many people sometimes back. And if we could also come up with such rivers which are in disaster, because for it to kill people, so many people, although it's being constructed, if there was this authority, it could have come up with some mitigation issues so that the bridge is constructed. But it is not, the project has been started and it's not over. I also have an accident-prone area in my constituency where after every few days people are killed. The road has a problem. So if there are deaths which are caused in this road between Kombo, Kabati, and Katutu, if this authority, we should also look at such things where why is this happening every time, and then come up with the mitigation measures, and with the funds, they will be able to come up with a solution for all these disasters. So with that, Madam Speaker, I support the bill and say that when it becomes an act, then we'll be able to save lives. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this bill. Honorable Speaker, as was well said by the Honorable Lord Chakapong when he moved this bill on my behalf, and allow me, Honorable Speaker, to take this opportunity to thank him for not just moving this bill on my behalf, but also having led his committee in consideration of this bill. And Honorable Speaker, going through the committee's report, I do agree with a number of their proposals, Honorable Speaker. And it's also important, Honorable Speaker, to know that this is a bill that I did in the last parliament and is among the bills that lapsed, which we sought to revive in this 13th parliament. And the need, Honorable Speaker, emanated from the desire to have a proper legal framework that would coordinate disaster risk management in the country, because we lacked that, Honorable Speaker, and we still lack. Honorable Speaker, I remember the time I came up with this bill was immediately after the Garissa University terrorist attack. And it was sad, Honorable Speaker, that at that time, and I would believe it's still the case today, in the absence of having a coordinated way in which we manage our disasters and management of risks that would contribute to more disasters. At that time, Honorable Speaker, I remember when the terrorists hit Garissa University, and so many students were shot, some killed, some injured, and you can imagine the anguish that parents had. Garissa at the time was around summer times in Kenya, Honorable Speaker, but temperatures soaring to highs of close to 40 degrees Celsius. And I had an engagement, Honorable Speaker, with a medical officer who was serving in the region at that time and coordinating that disaster from Garissa. And as sad as it was, Honorable Speaker, those who unfortunately lost their lives, upon their bodies being taken to the morgue at the Garissa District Hospital, as it were then, the morgue could not handle the number of bodies that were being taken there. And bodies by that evening had started decomposing. By the time the government was able to mobilize resources from Nairobi to fly to Garissa, to even get fingerprints from the bodies that were already decomposing, it was not even possible. And I was told by those who were in the medical profession, when bodies stay under such temperatures, they get disfigured. And therefore, even fingerprints were disfigured. And that's why you realize it took a long time for families who are already notified that they have lost their loved young ones at the university, but they could not be able to identify what body belongs to who. Imagine the anguish parents had. Some, I remember, accommodated at Chiromo University, Chiromo campus of the University of Nairobi. And there were harrowing stories of parents being subjected to walk from Chiromo all the way to Nyayo Stadium every morning, going to wait for buses at the Nyayo Stadium to see if they would be able to identify those who are coming in buses from Garissa, be able to get information as to whether they have lost their loved ones. And eventually, Honorable Speaker, I remember I engaged with one parent who had traveled all the way from West Pokot, sold his 3 goats to get fare to come to Nairobi. And he exhausted the money that he had sold his 3 goats through trying to get accommodation in Nairobi, and had to walk every day when they were eventually hosted by the University of Nairobi in Chiromo. He had to walk every day for almost a week and a half before he finally identified his deceased child from Garissa University. And that motivated me, Honorable Speaker, to ask myself, what is it that we can do to ensure that if such a disaster ever struck again, there is a coordinated way in which we can handle such a disaster or others, Honorable Speaker. And from members' contributions, you can hear the anguish even ourselves as members of parliament have to go through every now and then, with simple disasters like the blowing off of roofs of our primary schools by strong winds, or floods. When floods ravage our constituencies, be it in Budalangi or somewhere in eastern Kenya, Kenyans are left suffering because there isn't a coordinated way through which government, both at the national level and at the county level, coordinates to handle disasters, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we sought to have this bill, Honorable Speaker, to address some of these challenges, to ensure that we not only provide that legal framework for disaster risk management, but also to enhance the effectiveness and a coordinated disaster preparedness, how we prevent disasters, how we respond, mitigation and recovery from disasters, Honorable Speaker, because it is one thing to wait for disasters to happen, Honorable Speaker. We all know that for many years, Budalangi constituency has been ravaged by floods, or when River Nyando and River Nzoia break their banks, people will suffer. And you remember the famous lady of Sirikali's idea during the regime of President Mwai Kibaki. And that lady brought to the fore the suffering of the people of Budalangi from floods. And I remember government at that time moved from those calls to establish dikes and other mitigation measures, but we do not have to wait for Kenyans to cry out. We should be proactive. We should move ahead of time to see how we can not only prevent and mitigate disaster, but also ensure that Kenyans are able to recover quickly post-disasters, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, this bill seeks to address some of those issues and also to reduce disaster risks and vulnerabilities at the national and also at the county levels of government. Honorable Speaker, members are aware that every county government and even the national government has funds that are usually set aside for unforeseen emergencies. And these contingency funds, Honorable Speaker, are never utilized for the right purposes. And you find that a disaster hits a county, and the county government of that particular county has no resources. Yet in their budgets, they had budgeted for a contingency fund for such eventualities and emergencies. By the time the disaster hits them, they are ill prepared and are always calling on the national government to come to their rescue. And therefore, we want to have a coordinated process so that we know how do we establish that each of our county governments are budgeting and providing funds for disaster mitigation and disaster management. How do we also ensure, as members of parliament who are in charge of budget making, that the contingency monies that are set aside to deal with disaster management are indeed appropriated for that particular purpose, Honorable Speaker, and also coordinate so that when it is a county level disaster or a disaster that is restricted within a particular county, the county can first utilize their resources before they go out to look for help. Honorable Speaker, also we have measures to know through a disaster management authority, Honorable Speaker, how can we even coordinate the mobilization of resources? Honorable Speaker, look at the COVID pandemic. we had, as a country, we had to set up an ad hoc committee, look for people in the private sector, in the corporate world, a few public officers, to form an ad hoc committee to mobilize resources to even be able to look for gloves and masks that were required to prevent loss of life, Honorable Speaker, and further spread of that disaster of COVID-19. Honorable Speaker, all these things have served to remind us as a country that we are always ill-prepared and we are caught flat-footed when disasters strike. And it is high time that we prepare in a way that we'll be able to enhance our own resilience to the impacts of disasters and other risks, and also issues that touch on climate change, Honorable Speaker. We are now in the discussions of climate change, and Honorable Speaker, how we mitigate issues to do with climate change. With the changing climate, Honorable Speaker, floods, hurricanes, Honorable Speaker, will become very common things. Honorable Speaker, if we don't take deliberate measures for reforestation, soil erosion, landslides will be so common, Honorable Speaker, and unless we have a system where there is somebody checking on what we are doing, both at the national level, at the county and local levels, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that even as we deal with climate change mitigation measures, we're also looking at the effects of that, the changes in our climate in matters touching on floods, as I said, soil erosion, washing away all the good soils and the nutrients that our crops need, Honorable Speaker, exposing us to other disasters such as hunger and droughts, Honorable Speaker. Landslides in those areas where they are prone to landslides, like in Murang'a County and other areas where Elgeyo Marakwet, Honorable Speaker, and West Pokot. You remember the disaster that struck us about 2 or 3 years ago. And I remember then, Honorable Speaker, when that disaster struck in West Pokot, even the minister who was in charge of the interior, the minister who was in charge of the small disaster unit that is hosted by the Ministry of Interior. I can't remember the name of that small unit because there are small units within the Ministry of Interior that deals with disasters. The minister in charge then, the Honorable former CS Fred Matiang'i, told the country unashamedly, Honorable Speaker, that he could not access the disaster area because of the weather at that time, flying a military helicopter. But the then Deputy President, with a small civilian helicopter, was able to access that place, Honorable Speaker. And that also speaks to the disdain and contempt that some of our public officers had with Kenyan people, that you do not relate to the suffering of the people when disasters strike. It took the then Deputy President, who is now serving as our President, flying a private chopper and even mobilizing private resources from Kenyans to be able to help the people of West Pokot then. And I was praying the member of parliament from that area was here, Honorable Speaker, because you do not know when such other disasters will strike. But we do not want to find ourselves in a situation where our current Minister for Interior will claim that because of weather, when he has choppers that have navigation equipment, he could not access a certain place because there is no proper framework as to how you respond to such disasters. And we want to find ourselves well prepared, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I do agree with the committee's report that indeed, on hindsight, there are certain changes that we can make to this bill, and I agree with them on the deletion of some of the clauses, like clause 5, 6, and 7, that touch on the establishment of an intergovernmental council that will comprise 10 members. And I want to thank the committee and the chair, Honorable Chakapong, and say I do agree with them, and we will support the amendments that they have proposed during committee of the whole. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support, as I also thank the many members who have spoken in support of this bill. Honorable Speaker, finally, because we are at a time and when the establishment of authorities and semi-autonomous sagas in government is a matter that is at the fore of our national conversations today, courtesy of the huge burden that we have bestowed on the exchequer on account of the management and running of state-owned enterprises. I want to state, Honorable Speaker, we must, during the Committee of the Whole, ensure that the National Disaster Management Authority will or should be a very lean authority that is more of a coordinating role, but not one that creates more bureaucracies to get money from the exchequer. It should be a very lean body that ensures that most of the money that will be appropriated towards disaster management goes towards the work of mitigation of disasters, management of disasters and recovery post-disasters, Honorable Speaker, but not into the bureaucracies of running state-owned enterprises or semi-autonomous government agencies. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support.
The Majority Leader, this is a very important bill. You are always very educative, and I'm happy the bill is coming from you. But I wanted to pick your mind for purposes of this general debate. Before you sit, I know you will have your opportunity to reply. I don't know whether you have the bill.
Yes.
Just something to signify to the committee that will be dealing with this thing with your approval. Look at clause 33. Or the other one can be given to the Majority Leader, so that as we debate, members are informed in terms of the areas we could, tighten. You see, it says that this authority has first to classify a disaster as either a county disaster or a disaster falling within the remit of national government before any action or intervention can take place. Assume it was something like that terrorist attack, and this classification is not timed. Or even the terrorist attack we had at the embassy of the United States here. How do you see this, working? And at this up clause, you're saying until a disaster is classified by the authority, it shall be deemed to be a county disaster.
It's true, Honorable Speaker, that whenever a disaster occurs or threatens, I don't know how it will threaten, to occur, the authority shall determine whether the event is a disaster under this act, and if so, immediately assess the magnitude and severity or potential magnitude and severity of the disaster, then classify the disaster as a county disaster or national disaster, and see record the prescribed. Honorable Speaker, I think these are some of the issues, Honorable Speaker, on hindsight, I say we, together with the committee, will be looking at possible amendments so that it is clear that the authority is to determine, when a disaster occurs or when it threatens to occur, for instance, when it is raining and trees are falling off the hilly parts of Muranga or Elgeyo Marakwet or West Pokot, and there's a threat that there is likely to be a landslide. Then the authority, we cannot wait for the authority to determine whether that disaster will be localized in that area or whether national government should intervene, because it's quite clear that a disaster is likely to occur or one has already occurred. They should be able to move with speed and be able to determine the magnitude. And I think we'll do some cleanup in this particular section to make it clear, so that, again, we are not bogged down, as I was saying earlier, by bureaucracies also that we also create in law.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think in that endeavor, the committee should also look at even the definition of disaster is too broad. Anything that causes death, injury, or disease, damages property, infrastructure, or environment, significant disruption of life to a community is a disaster. You may end up in a situation where everything is a disaster waiting for national government intervention. And as we do that, we also look at the fourth schedule in terms of the kind of disaster the counties can give them, so that we delineate them. The Honorable Dr. James Nyikal, the MP for Seme. Honorable Millie, what is out of order?
Thank you, Chair, for giving me that opportunity. Chair, I just wanted to inform the Chair, based on actually what you've said, that if you look at the definition of disaster, there is also the word localized, so that when the committee is considering that amendment, they also must remove the issue of the word localized. And they also need to look at it in tandem with the Victim Protection Act that looks at victimization that have to do with the criminalization in nature, including terrorist attacks.
The Honorable Millie Odhiambo, do you want to contribute?
Yes, I could,
The
but
Speaker has powers under Standing Order number 1 to reverse, so that you go before Honorable Dr. Nyikal, because I've been with you long enough in Parliament, Honorable Millie Odhiambo, to know when you want to contribute and when you want to wait. Do you
no,
want to contribute?
Chair, I don't mind waiting. It's just that I thought because you are raising it at that time.
Okay,
So I
good.
don't mind waiting because he's also my senior.
So wait and make those presentations. The Honorable Dr. Nyikal proceeds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important bill, and I rise to support it. And Mr. Speaker, the objective of this is to actually get a legal framework for coordination. And Mr. Speaker, emergencies on the disasters normally have an emergency element. So most disasters will have an emergency element. And if there's an emergency element, there is need for preparedness. And these are things that actually have to be done before. And then you have to get government systems that work through structures. So I support this bill because if you have to have an emergency response, you need to have pre-planned, and you need to work through government structures that sometimes are actually obstructive. Then you need a legal framework for coordination. And when you talk of coordination, Mr. Speaker, when you talk of disasters and emergencies, it is not often one department of government that is involved. It will actually involve many. It will involve security. It may involve the transport system. It will involve the health system. And all these will be various departments that are doing various things. But in a disaster, they have to come together to deliver. So I support that this bill tries to address that. It is even more important for us that we are working in a devolved system, where apart from just having departments, you also have two levels of government. And therefore, you have to say who is going to manage a disaster. And because of the emergency nature, there is sometimes no time for that decision to be done. Therefore, getting structures is important. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why I actually support this. It gives us those structures. And if you're dealing with risk, then it's not only taking action, but actually looking at prevention. Every disaster, we must find out why it happened, is it likely to happen again, and put in place preventive measures. This bill actually talks of classification of risk, and I think you have raised the issue of clause 33. But we should look at it more of classifying the risk than waiting to classify the disaster itself, because by that time it is extremely late, and therefore we are talking of risk management. So we must then classify the risk. If we have a history, and it also talks about information, we have an information, we have a risk. What we talk of Budalangi, we talk of Nyando. When the rains are coming, we know that these areas are likely to have that. And therefore, what risks do you put in place? And even what classification? And if you have a classification, Mr. Speaker, then you can use algorithms. You can't wait until it happens, then now say, okay, this one is there. You say, if this one happens, this is what needs to be done. That is how you actually manage emergencies. You don't wait. You have algorithms, and with those algorithms, you also put up
SOPs, how you respond, yeah, so that you know with this is what you do, and this is what should be done. And then if you have structures, that also will tell you who should do it. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support the Intergovernmental Council of Disaster Risk Management. We must really look at the word risk more than just disaster. If we start thinking of what they will act when the disaster has occurred, we're missing the point. So it is the risk, the risk then is between the council, the intergovernmental. But Mr. Speaker, in our devolved system, we have had a problem. We have a body called the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. You are a lawyer, but you know that we also created something called the Secretariat of the Council of Governors. Those two things, actually, one is illegal and the other one isn't working. So even if we form these intergovernmental structures, we must be willing to actually get those structures to work. Otherwise, there'll be points of argument. We then create an authority, and what I like about this authority, when you have a risk, if you have assessed your risk, then it must come in pre-planning, and if you are going to have pre-planning, you must have a budget. The worst thing is when you wait until you have a disaster, and then now you are starting to look for funds. And the leader of majority was saying, sometimes the government is not prepared, and therefore philanthropists take advantage to seek a lot of credit for it. But the philanthropists are good, but the philanthropists should work within a structure that is laid out. In fact, when you have a disaster, you then have to need to control philanthropies, because quite often they can actually derail the issues we have. In 2007, when we had the IDPs, we had to go in and control the philanthropies that were coming within the structures that are put in place. If you work here, this is what you do. You come with your food, this is what you do. We come with your medicines, this is where you put it. Otherwise, they seem to take over. So I like the council that are put in place. I like the authority, but the authority I like because they're pre-planning and the budgeting so that there's a framework. Even those who are giving you funds, sometimes it is better for them to just give you funds and work through a structure than actually to have one person coming with a load of food, the other come with a load of medicine. Nobody has checked whether these medicines are registered in the country. Nobody knows whether the food is expired. And now people are just running around helter-skelter. So that those authorities will do that. Then we have the county disaster risk management committees. Again, if we can have all these structures, but if we don't have the standard operating procedures which are within these committees and risks that have been identified and set so that you do this and this, these committees will not work. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and we look at it and look at areas where you really need to look at risk rather than wait for disasters to take place and then try to classify them and manage them. You should be prepared. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Martin Owino, MP from Dewa. Honorable Millie indicated she's not in a hurry.
And the Speaker, I heard her
Honorable
very well.
Millie, you'll speak after Honorable Martin Owino.
I heard her very clearly. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many has been said about this bill, and I just want to add my voice to it. Disaster management is a process, really. It's a process that starts with prevention, which I want to emphasize, that we really need to think of preventing what occurs so that we are not caught unawares. Especially the floods, the fires, some of these things are time bomb, and we know. Prevention should also, which I didn't see elaborated here, Speaker, we should have a very elaborated research system to know what kind of disasters we have in our country and when they strike.
For example, in health realms, you may find seasons and the flus, and that should be well noted so that we prepare, we give flu shots before it becomes epidemic. Also, there's an element of preparedness. When it strikes, then what do we do as a people or as a system we are trying to put in place? Preparedness is one way of solving a problem. If you're not prepared, the way our counties are not, most of the time you find that CDF is called upon. School has burned down or bridge has broken, but we can hardly cope with those. But if we have this structure where we have a national or federal government supporting the systems on the ground, then we can easily manage disasters. Mr. Speaker, there's an element of response. When it happens, sometimes it needs rapid response. And sometimes what you just mentioned caught me. When the disaster is classified as county, and it is more than a county, then what do? That will cause a delay. And when you delay in response, then you have a loss of lives and even more disabilities. So I think I do support what Mikhail says. We rather classify risks more than classifying the disaster, because there's no time for classification when disaster strikes anyway. The other element which I want to add on to this, which should be magnified, is when you have responded, there will be loss of lives, unfortunately, and also there will be disabilities. How do you manage aftermath? That is always left out. For example, if properties are stricken, you may have people homeless. Do we have shelters where they can go? Those should be factored in, and the committees should consider about that. So the nature, the extent, and the severity and occurrences, all this packed together in our research portfolio should inform us as a country, so that when disaster is about to or is almost, we can know and proactively respond to it. But I think this is a good bill, and I thank the authors. I don't want to say much because I know Millie is almost on half it, and I have exhausted my point. So I yield my time to Millie if that exists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You've also taken over the role of the speaker. I can assure you the Honorable Millie Grace Odhiambo, MP for Suba North, should have the mic to make her contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this bill and thank the committee for bringing it, or the leader of majority. And I also want to indicate at the onset that it's a good thing that now we are having a legislative framework on disaster risk management. Indeed, I'm actually glad that it's clarified, because I remember very clearly we had this bill in the last parliament, but I do notice that it had lapsed. Mr. Speaker, because most people have spoken a lot to the issue of disaster risk management, I just wanted to talk about some of the issues that I've seen that are thrown in the bill. One of them, which I was actually intervening because I didn't know that I would have the time, is on the issue of definition of disaster, that because they have included the word local, it actually limits, because then a disaster can happen that is beyond local. But when you use the word local, it means it limits how we respond when you actually make disaster a local affair. And we have seen from experience, and even from what the majority leader had given, for example, of COVID, do you classify COVID as a local issue or is it a national issue? Then, Mr. Speaker, one of the other issues that I've actually picked that is of concern for me also is the definition of disaster risk management. And I'm encouraging the committee, even though I've proposed amendments already, that they should expand it to include having in place a permanent structure of disaster risk management at the county and national level, identifying and mapping disaster-prone or vulnerable areas, situations of people as part of management, because we already know as a country which areas are very prone to flooding, for instance, but we always operate like it's a shock when it happens. And then issuing early warning of imminent disaster. Mr. Speaker, if you go even to BBC and other areas now, you actually see alerts that are issued all the time. And even if you look at today's nation, I think media, I don't know if it was Nation or what, that I was reading, the US is already giving an alert on a possible terrorist attack in Somalia. That is actually a preparation for disaster. Why don't we have things like that? And then relocating populations in case of imminent disasters and using technology to better management disaster. Mr. Speaker, one time when we were in Indonesia with the committee of budget, I woke up in the night, I was sleeping, and I actually thought I'd overslept and forgotten to switch off my TV. And Mr. Speaker, after a while, I actually discovered that it was an automated system coming through the TV that was warning us that there has just been an earthquake of this magnitude, and we should go out and we should do XYZ, for a focal point. And Mr. Speaker, by the time I was walking down, I think God gave me an amazing ability to sleep. I met people walking up. I had slept through the earthquake. And when I reached, I found people that were in centralized places. Should we have an earthquake in Kenya, I can tell you it will be shocking how we'd react, because we don't have those centralized places. In Indonesia, everybody knows there's an earthquake. Every hotel has a centralized area. We should also have those automated systems even in our hotels, not just for earthquakes, but for other things. I'd want to say, for instance, my own county, Homa Bay, is an earthquake-prone area, but we have such things. I know Honorable Gladys will be doing something about it. She's just done her first year. But in terms of the law, those are the things that we need to be putting. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that is of concern to me is the issue of the definition again of emergency preparedness. And I'm encouraging the committee that what we need to add as part of emergency preparedness is having a policy in place for both the national and the county government, but also having in place a monitoring system for both the county and national government, having in place an early warning system, a continuous public education and awareness to the public on disaster risk response, including emergency numbers and centers, and having in place facilities and equipment for effective and quick response in case of disasters, including fire trucks, land, water, and air ambulatory services. Mr. Speaker, right now, if we were to have a disaster in Fangano Island, would actually have a challenge because we don't have a boat ambulatory system. I know we've raised it with our governor and she said she will bring it, but I'm not just saying it in relation to Homa Bay County. What about other areas that are, covered by water? If there's an emergency or a disaster, how do you respond quickly? And because now the systems that we have there are mainly private. And even for us to mobilize them, you might find the ferry is in Kisumu or wherever, and they are slow. If you are dealing with disasters, you need quick response. So for me, those are some of the issues that I'd want. Again, in clause 4, one of the guiding principles should be protecting vulnerable groups, including women, children, persons with disabilities, and the elderly in cases of disasters. Because we have not mentioned them specifically, but disaster affects different groups differently. When you have women and children, when you have disasters, women will be prone to sexual abuse and all other kind of issues. How do we respond to women in disasters like that, where they do no longer have any habitation and whatever? What about menstrual and gene and things like that when you have disasters? And then I'm also suggesting that we need to have the Minister for Gender because of that issue in the management authority. I know we are also trying to make it smaller, but even as we make it smaller, we need to have the Minister for Gender, who mercifully a lot of times also doubles up as the one in charge of the young person. But I know that now it's not the same, but it would be important. And then, Chair, on the issue of governance, it's an issue that I've been speaking to a lot on this floor, but I will re-emphasize it. Chair, we have this tendency that you find one Kenyan in 2 boards, or in serving a government office, but also in a board. When there are many Kenyans who don't have anything, why don't they also serve in those boards? or we have one person that have exceptional intellectual capacities. Those are things that we also must address. We must also, in terms of governance, one of the other issues that we must also look at is the way we phrase the powers that we give the chair of the board. And one of the powers that we need to give the board is not to dismiss somebody for absenting themselves, but without justification. Chair, one of the other things that I'd want to say is also that we need to ensure that we take a zebra approach when we are appointing the boards or the officers to any of the bodies. And so that if you have a male chair, you should have a female vice and vice versa. Mr. Speaker, I've written a few of the issues. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I just want to complete by saying one of the things that I've told you before, I've sponsored the Victim Protection Act. And one of the clauses in the Victim Protection Act is the issue of victimization, mass victimization arising from a crime. So for instance, the issue of terrorism. And one of the things it does, it says that, this is actually born of the fact that when we have seen all the times that we have seen terrorist attacks, how have we responded as a country? Every single person has walked in there to respond, not the officers. Secondly, in their response, we don't preserve the evidence. We don't also look at the victim. We don't see like what you see if you actually look at a lot of the programs in the US or other areas, that they will preserve the dress that the person is wearing for purposes of identification or any other identifying features. I was very shocked one time when I went to Kenyatta National Hospital, and I saw recently that they wanted to dispose of bodies. And they were telling people to just come and dispose of bodies. And I asked them, do you keep in such cases of disposals any evidence that when somebody one time wants to identify a person who is lost, they can do that? And they said, no, they don't have. I was actually shocked. So that is why, for instance, one of the people who used to be an ODM member called Matunga, who disappeared from Gwasi, to date can't be traced because there is no DNA evidence. This applies to mass victimization as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I've proposed several amendments to this bill. It is a good bill. It is a timely bill. I encourage the majority speaker to be more futuristic and stop looking backwards and always blaming other people, including Honorable Matiangi, because the country has moved on. With those few remarks, I support.
Thank you, Honorable Emilio Diambo, always very informative. The Honorable Dr. Suzanne Kiamba, the MP for Makueni.
While I think it is in order to have a disaster management authority, I wish to raise some few concerns. And one of the concerns I wish to raise is the fact that in this country, we are working very hard to create very many structures. We've made so many structures that ends up having no budget or money to do what we wish them to do. I want to give an example when we come to issues of water and issues water. You'll find it at Nahadi, you'll find the Tana, you'll find quite a number of Walma, and you'll find like around 3 or so structures. But when you look at the budget to deliver what is supposed to be delivered, Honorable Speaker, we tend to find it quite wanting. So I'm of the opinion, like we have a ministry under which disaster risk management is under that particular ministry. And you realize that the institutional capacity within the ministry is very weak. My concern is, why should we continue making more structures while we have institutionalized structures that don't have capacity? The moment we create a structure, Honorable Speaker, we attract a budget. We are living at times in this country when the money is very scarce. So when I sit down and listen to this bill, I'm seeing a new budget coming up. And I'm wondering, Honorable Speaker, when we continue creating these many budgets overheads, when will we have money for the outcomes which we want to deliver in this particular country? I also find it very interesting, Honorable Speaker, when we look at the fact that disaster is something that happens once in a while, not every day. But the moment you create an authority, you have to have a budget that has to be taken care every month. In my view, disaster should be mainstreamed because we have health-related disasters, we have water-related disasters, we have food security-related disasters. In my view, an authority is too much an overhead. We need every department to mainstream the risk management and disaster. And by that way, we reduce the cost of running these disasters right from the national level up to the county level. Otherwise, we'll have so many structures and no money to deliver the kind of outcomes we want to our own people. So, Honorable Speaker, of course you can see I really do not agree with this motion of having more structures. As a Kenyan representative, I'm interested in delivering outcomes to our people. Even look at even our own leadership structure. A Kenyan at the grassroots there is represented by a president, a deputy president, a senator, a woman rep, a governor, a member of parliament, an MCA. I've not mentioned the chief and his assistant. What reaches that voter at the ground under all that particular process? I'm feeling even when we go to service delivery, we are going still to the same, let me not call it mess, to the same kind of thinking where we create so much structure that when it comes to service delivery, we spend most of the income without bringing the change we want. Honorable Speaker, I am opposing this motion because in my view, I think risk management is not something that happens every day and should not have somebody sitting 365 days to wait when disaster comes. But people in every sector, people in every ministry, we should strengthen the disaster component. And by so doing, we can deliver seamless outcomes to our people when disaster emerges. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, I stand to oppose that creation of a structure. I wish it could be integrated in already existing structures that we have and we deliver the service. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Dr. Suzanne Kiamba is saying when Parliament is struck now, you should not have some authority sitting somewhere still deciding whether there should be response. We should build in disaster response within systems so that there is no need for authority. I hear her to be saying that. And Honorable Martin Owino, of course, says that we should classify disaster, those ones which the counties need to respond to, those ones the national government, instead of waiting for a disaster to sit down and then plan. Everybody would be dead by then. The mover should now reply. Honorable Dr. Undo, I see you, but I remember I gave you opportunity to address the nation on this particular one. Yes, sir. So mover.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to, on behalf of the Leader of Majority, the Honorable Kimani Chungwa, the member for Kikuyu, I want to take this opportunity to reply. Now, Honorable Speaker, first of all, I want to thank all the honorable members who got an opportunity to contribute. And I want to, Honorable Speaker, say that we have taken their concerns, we have taken their contributions, and we are going to critically look at them and see how we are going to incorporate what honorable members have raised while debating this bill in the next stage. So, Honorable Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Regional Development Committee for doing a good job. But, Honorable Speaker, equally, I want to say that because wherever they are, they have also seen the concerns of honorable members having gone through the report, having gone through the bill, and they have also made proposals. Honorable Speaker, I think I have seen members talk about the definitions that we need to recheck. I've also heard that from you, the Honorable Speaker, we have to relook at clause 33 and many other proposals that members have given. As a committee, we also proposed amendments to this bill, which of course we're going to bring in in the next stage of this bill. So, Honorable Speaker, together with what Honorable members have proposed, we are going to look at it again, and then come back here and we agree as a House on how we are going to move forward. However, Honorable Speaker, you have seen that the majority of members have supported this bill. And from their contributions, this bill would not have come at a better time than now. So I want to sincerely commend them and thank them for their support. And of course, whatever they have again raised as a way of we need to relook at, I think is welcomed. Now, Honorable Speaker, disasters have been managed from various quarters in this country. Like, for example, when we had the landslides in the West Pokot the other time, that was my constituency, Sigor, part of Pokot South, and some other regions of this country. Responding was by the Kenya Defense Forces, mainly. And in certain instances, it was even very difficult for agencies and even well-wishers to access the areas that had landslides. So it was really very, very difficult. And I think now, by coming out with this bill, which, Honorable Speaker, now seems to provide a legal framework so that we have coordination of disaster risk management, because as it is now, it is done through the KDF. There is a disaster operations center at the Ministry of Interior. We have agencies like the Red Cross and others. So it's important that we have a framework, a legal framework, so that all these actors involved in disaster risk management and disaster risk management get coordinated and even take stock of even the actors in disaster risk management. So we have even proposed in this bill that we are going to have a register of all the actors and players who are going to do something about disaster. Honorable Speaker, the fourth schedule to the Constitution provides that disaster management is a shared function between the two levels of government in this country. That is the national government and the county government. That is why, Honorable Speaker, we have here proposed a National Disaster Risk Management Authority, and at the county, we have a disaster, county disaster committee that will be headed by somebody who will be competitively recruited. And in that way, I think we are going to have a situation where the two levels of government coordinate and work together to address cases of disaster. Honorable Speaker, you know, the people in the counties are Kenyans. So we don't have people of the national government and people of county government. So whenever a disaster occurs, it affects Kenyans. And if this bill is going to help in terms of reaction time between the time a disaster occurs and the time it is being addressed, then I think this is good. Now, Honorable Speaker, I know that the various issues that have been put forward will be taken into consideration. Now, Honorable Speaker, when this bill will be enacted into law, The enactment of this bill, Honorable Speaker, will lead to efficient and effective management of disasters across the country. During contribution here, that it may be too bureaucratic between the time a disaster occurs and the time it is being classified. But I want to say that probably that time, the reaction time between when a disaster occurs and when it is being addressed, it can be a very short time, because we have also classified disasters into a county disaster and maybe a national disaster. Where a disaster affects more than one county, we can call it a national disaster. And when it is affecting one county, then it can be a county disaster. But in instances where, even when it is affecting one county and the county is unable to manage it, then again, we call it a national disaster. So, Honorable Speaker, we have also said that the president can declare a state of disaster. So, and I think when the president also comes in, and when the magnitude of a disaster gets to certain levels, then the president can declare a state of national disaster. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, with all the inputs by honorable members and what we have also proposed as a committee for amendments, I think this bill will go a long way to ensuring that whenever disasters strike, or whenever we have instances or cases of disaster, then I think there is a coordinated way of responding to disasters in this country, and probably even in a timely manner. So, Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I sincerely thank honorable members who contributed, and I therefore beg to reply. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Mover, for the convenience of the House, the question on second reading of this bill will be put the next time it will be scheduled for consideration by the House Business Committee. The Honorable, next order.
Order number 13, motion, reports of the Auditor General on the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County.
Mover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the second report of the Decentralized Funds Accounts Committee on its examination of audited financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for five constituencies in Vihiga for the financial years 2013-2014, 2014-2015, and 2015-2016, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th February 2024. Honorable Speaker, the Decentralized Funds Accounts Committee is a select committee established pursuant to the National Assembly Standing Orders 205B, and is responsible for the examination of the reports of Auditor General on the accounts of, among others, the National Government Constituencies Development Fund and the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. Honorable Speaker, the National Government Constituency Development Fund has had significant impacts on our communities and on individuals' lives since its establishment in 2003. Honorable members can attest that the fund has helped transform our communities through the development and maintenance of infrastructure projects, especially in schools and other educational facilities, as well as provision of bursaries to needy students. These CDF-funded projects have stimulated economic activity in the constituencies by providing employment opportunities during construction and enhancing local infrastructure that supports businesses, leading to increased economic growth and prosperity. Improved access to education, on the other hand, has translated to communities being more empowered and leading better lives. It is indeed an economic stimulus program which should be cascaded to other development projects. Honorable Speaker, one important aspect of the NGCNDA projects has been the participatory nature of the projects that it funds. The NGCNDA often involves community participation in project selection, implementation, and monitoring. This has empowered communities to take charge of their development priorities and foster a sense of ownership over the projects, leading to sustainable development outcomes, unlike other development projects. Honorable Speaker, oversight over national revenue and expenditure is amongst the roles of the National Assembly as stipulated under Section 95(4)(c) of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Further, Article 226 of the Constitution provides that an act of parliament shall provide for the designation of an accounting officer in every public entity at the national level who is accountable to the National Assembly for its financial management. In addition, Article 229(8) mandates this House to debate and take appropriate action on audit reports from the Auditor General. Further, Section 68(1) of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 provides in the earlier that an accounting officer of the national government entity, Parliamentary Service Commission, and the judiciary shall be accountable to the National Assembly to ensure that the resources of the respective entity for which he or she is accountable, accounting officer, are used in a way that is lawful and authorized and effective, efficient, economical, and transparent. In addition, Section 12(3) of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund Act, number 30 of 2015, provides that the fund account manager shall hold the authority to incur expenditure of the funds at the constituency. The fund account managers were therefore invited to respond to concerns raised by the committee in their capacity as AIE orders. Honorable Speaker, it is in line with these constitutional and legal provisions that the committee invited the fund account managers, both current and former, as accounting officers of the NGCDF to respond to audit queries raised by the Auditor General during their tenure. The committee also invited the board of NGCDF to respond to policy issues which were also subjected to audit queries. Information received formed the basis for the various recommendations outlined in this report, which are geared towards effective management of the fund. Honorable Speaker, the committee, while examining the audited accounts for Vihiga, Sambatia, Amisi, Emuhaya, and the Luanda constituencies in Vihiga County, the committee observed that in the financial year 2013-2014, all the constituencies examined had audit issues raised following the High Court of Kenya ruling on petition number 71 of 2013, which held that Constituency Development Fund 2013, establishing the Constituency Development Fund since an enactment of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was unconstitutional. The committee further observed that the issue was overtaken by events as it was addressed through the passing of the NGCDF Act 2015 and its regulations 2016, which aligned the fund functions to national government functions. The functions were further aligned by the enactment of the NGCDF Act 2023, recently passed by this Honorable House. Honorable Speaker, the committee also observed in all the constituencies, the Auditor General had raised issues on under expenditure or non-implementation of projects due to late receipt of funds in the constituencies. The committee observed that this was beyond the capacity of the fund account managers and recommended that the National Treasury should ensure timely and adequate disbursement of funds to the National Government Constituencies and Development Fund Board for immediate release to the constituencies. Honorable Speaker, the committee also observed that in all the constituencies examined, documents were filed late for verification during the audit period and recommended that the accounting officers should ensure that fund account managers comply with the provisions of Section 62(1)(b) and (c) of the Public Audit Act, number 34 of 2015, which provides that a person shall not, without justification failed to provide information required under this act, and without justification failed to provide information within reasonable time that is required under this act. Honorable Speaker, the committee also made some general observations and recommendations on issues which cut across 5 constituencies in Vihiga County as follows. Firstly, Honorable Speaker, in the regard to reallocation and use of emergency funds, the committee observed that some of the projects funded using emergency funds did not meet the threshold of the Section 6(2) and Section 8 of the NGCDF Act 2015. The committee recommended that the NGCDF Constituency Development Fund Board should ensure that the fund account managers comply with the provisions of Section C262 and Section 8 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015, which provides that Section 6(2), once funds are allocated for a particular project, they shall remain allocated for that project and may only be reallocated for any other purpose during the financial year with the approval of the board. And number 2, Section 8(1), a portion of the fund equivalent to 5%, hereinafter referred to as emergency reserve, shall remain unallocated and shall be available for emergencies that may occur within the constituency. The constituency committee shall determine the allocation of the emergency reserve in accordance with the act. And the number 3, emergency shall be construed to mean an urgent and foreseen need for expenditure for which it is in the opinion of the committee that it cannot be delayed until the next financial year without harming the public interest of the constituents. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in respect of pending ongoing projects, the committee observed that the critical cause of pending ongoing projects being common in the constituencies was partial allocation of funds for projects. Committee therefore recommends that the NGCDA board should, with immediate effect, discourage the partial allocation of funds to projects and ensure that projects are completed at most within 2 financial years. Further, NGCDF committee should ensure proper costing of the projects is done through consultation with the relevant government and departments to ensure realistic cost estimates. And the NGCDA board should come up with a realistic policy framework of costing projects for each constituency by the end of the first quarter of the financial year 2023-24, which is informed by the cost of materials, cost of transportation, taxes, inflation index, and the topography of each constituency. Thirdly, Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that there was poor coordination between the Office of the Auditor General and the fund account managers, particularly regarding to the timely response to audit queries. The committee further observed that there is need for NGCDA board to inform fund account managers across the country to respond to audit queries promptly. The committee, the NGCDA board, the committee recommended the NGCDA board issues administrative circular directing fund account managers to comply with the provisions of the Constitution 2010, the Public Audit Act number 34, 2015, the Public Finance Management Act number 18 of 2012, and Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act number 33 of 2015. 3, the board to ensure the fund account managers maintain the original project management files at the CDF office, while the duplicates are maintained at the project committees at the project sites to ensure that documents are available at the time of audit. 3, the board should ensure constituency committees employ qualified accountants for the constituency offices beginning 23-24 within the 6% administrative allocation to the board. This will strengthen the maintenance of books of accounts and preparation of financial statements. Fourthly and lastly, Honorable Speaker, on the accuracy of financial statements, the committee observed that fund account managers experience challenges in adopting to international public sector accounting standards, IPSAS, reporting framework in preparation of financial statements. The standards were introduced in 2013-14 financial year in the public sector, and the failure to comply with the standards in subsequent years occasioned qualification of financial statements. The committee also established that Public Sector Accounting Standards Board reviews the IPSA standards periodically to take into account emerging issues and conform to best accounting practices. Some fund account managers experience challenges in application of these standards while preparing financial statements as envisaged in the audit queries. The committee recommends that 1. Fund account managers comply with the IPSAS framework in preparation of financial statements. 2. The board, in consultation with the Public Accounting Standards Board, conducts continuous capacity building on financial reporting standards for constituency staff. 3. The board, in consultation with the Public Procurement Authority, should conduct continuous capacity building to all fund account managers on procurement laws and regulations within 3 months of the tabling of this report. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to mention that while examining these reports, the committee did not find anything adverse or alarming, and observations and recommendations of the committee show there is nothing to worry about in the implementation of CDF projects. I therefore sincerely congratulate the respective members of parliament in these constituencies for the good work they are doing in the constituencies, and thank the fund account managers, both current and former, for their cooperation when called upon to appear to give evidence to the committee on the audited accounts. I also wish to acknowledge the CEO of the board for the technical support they gave the committee during the examination and guidance provided to the constituencies on the policy matters, which have streamlined the reporting of the accounts of the constituencies. Honorable Speaker, I also take this opportunity to appreciate my fellow committee members for their commitment to the work before us and the sitting for long hours to examine the reports before the committee and come up with this report. I also wish to thank the office of the Speaker and the Clerk for the support given to the committee. May I also extend the committee appreciation to the Office of the Auditor General, the National Treasury, and Committee Secretariat for the good work they have put in facilitating committee and providing the technical support which enabled the committee to finalize the report. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Who is seconding your motion?
May I request the Honorable Muthoni Kiara to second?
Honorable Doni Kiara should have the mic to second.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to second the motion that this House adopts the second report of the Decentralized Funds Account Committee on its examination of the audited financial statement for the National Government Constituency Development Fund for the 5 constituencies in Vihiga County. Honorable Speaker, I do wish to appreciate that the National Government Constituency Development Fund is one of the funds that is felt on the ground, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the issues that are normally raised when we call or when we go for audit, Honorable Speaker, it's important to know that they cut across all the constituencies. And during the examination of these financial statements, Honorable Speaker, we do realize that in all the constituencies, the issues that we come across normally are the same. And Honorable Speaker, we have taken time in more often than not to scrutinize all the reports that are brought by the fund account managers. But Honorable Speaker, the committee's general observation, as cited by the mover, therefore, is these constituencies in Vihiga, for instance, on the issue of unimplemented projects, the committee observed that there was delay in implementing massive delay in implementation of the projects, and The reason given is treasury. Honorable Speaker, because of delay in disbursement of the same projects, of the same monies. Honorable Speaker, the committee recommended that the National Treasury should ensure timely and adequate disbursement of funds to the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board for immediate release to the constituencies to avert these massive delays. Honorable Speaker, I also wish to reiterate that the committee's observation on poor coordination between the Office of the Auditor General and the fund account managers, particularly regarding the timely response to audit queries and the need for the National Government Constituency Development Board to inform the fund account managers across the county to respond to audited queries promptly. Honorable Speaker, the committee recommends, amongst others, that the National Government Constituency Development Board should ensure constituency committees employ qualified accountants for the constituency office. And Honorable Speaker, we also observed that these account fund managers, sometimes proper induction is not done because, Honorable Speaker, you find they don't know even what to bring during audit. And this makes the committee keeps calling them again and again. To repeat this, Honorable Speaker, we want to urge the National Government Constituency Fund Board to ensure that they do proper induction to all the fund managers to avert wastage of public resources, calling the committee and wastage of time for the committee members, because we normally sit long hours, Honorable Speaker, so that we can be able to come out with very credible report. Honorable Speaker, I wish to join my chairman in saying that in all the constituencies, money has been used prudently. And Honorable Speaker, it is important for all of us to laud the members of parliament because their work is oversight. And Honorable Speaker, it is important also to note that the only fund that we can properly account for and see in terms of development is the funds utilized and the funds that come from the national government constituency. So, Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this because the counties are also in place, but whenever we go, the buildings that we see, Honorable Speaker, we can see clearly they are national government constituency development fund projects that have been properly utilized, and some are in proper use, Honorable Speaker, except for the few issues that we have raised where there is massive delay in disbursement of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. And on that note, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, I wish to urge the NGCDF board, chaired by the honorable members in this house, so that they urge Treasury to release these funds well on time, so that we don't have massive delays of projects. Honorable Speaker, I wish to second this very important report and say NGCDF is the way to go. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Decentralized Funds Accounts Committee on its consideration of the financial statements of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County for the financial years 2013-2014, 2014-2015, and 2015-2016, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14 February 2024. The Honorable Dr. Wilberforce Oundo, MP for Funyula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to commend the Committee of Decentralized Funds for the wonderful job they have been doing. And Honorable Speaker, allow me as well to sympathize with them. And I hope they listen so they can receive my sincere sympathy, because trying to audit books of account of 2014, 2015, and those kind of dates, Honorable Speaker, is a Herculean task, and they must have Solomonic wisdom to how to unravel this matter. Honorable Speaker, and it's also interesting and really commendable, because naturally the standard practice that after 7 years, accounting documents are destroyed or they're declared redundant. How they have managed to review the financial books of account for 2013, and indeed I must commend an architect can always redraw, even destroy the house, and the chair is an architect, I know, and having been a PS, probably has learned the art of exorcising all the ghosts. Honorable Speaker, I must also admit that quite a number of fund managers who attended this meeting to discuss the audited accounts, quite many of them had not even joined the board when these funds were being expended. So indeed, they grappled in the dark, but it's good to see the caliber of what they are. They were able to adequately answer the records, answer all the questions based on the records available. Honorable Speaker, Article 95-96 bestowed the National Assembly the mandate to oversight government funds. And indeed, this is what members of parliament do here in the National Assembly and also in Mashinani in respect of the CDF funds. And I want to reiterate very clearly, for avoidance of doubts, that members of parliament are not members of the CDFC committees at the constituency level. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, with the change in the law, even where members of parliament by any accident used to sit in the oversight committee, that has long been reversed. So essentially, the CDF fund as it is a completely independent fund run by its own structures. The members of parliament only oversight. Just like we can oversight any national government project, we can attend the launch of any national government project when they're being launched, be it by the minister, be it by the PS, be it even by the president, or whoever attends. So our attendance in such launches, such handover, is just part of our representation and of our oversight role. Honorable Speaker, when we seek to find out what has been done, we are simply oversighting. We are not involved directly in the management of the funds. When the reports are brought here, Honorable Speaker, we indeed also have just oversight, like everybody else can do anywhere. So I want the members of the press, the Republic, and everybody to desist at any time associating a member of parliament with any misappropriation, any corruption, or unethical management of any funds at any given time. The AIE holder, as the chair has clearly explained, is the fund accounts manager. That's the AIE holder at the constituency level. At the board level, it's the CEO. So if there is any issue, indeed the people to answer those questions are the EIE holders who are the fund managers. But fund managers also work within the local context. So it's always important, the Office of the Auditor General and all those who are involved in any form of oversight or auditing must put in mind that this is a local environment, local circumstances. Honorable Speaker, when you go to the procurement processes, Honorable Speaker, you would go to some remote constituencies. You might not be able to get all the contractors who have got all the required documentation at any given time. You impose certain types of plant and machinery, you expect some kind of personnel, which will never be found. Indeed, Honorable Speaker, if we were to follow strictly the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act, then most of the tenders for CDF job, the small ones, will be literally non-responsive, and they would therefore the funds not be spent and be no value for money. That's why we always urge the auditors, yes, this is what the law says, but the law is progressive. The law is not stuck at one point or another. Even when you look at the provisions about interpretation of the Constitution, they tell you this alive document must be interpreted as a living document, not as a dead horse which you flog and doesn't respond. So we want to urge that it's not only this particular fund. There are some even funds like Equalization Fund that are taken to do work, execute work in very remote places. Let the Office of the Auditor General be realistic, be reasonable, and be alive to the fact that there are local circumstances that dictate a different approach to a strictly procurement process that we could undertake here in Nairobi or elsewhere. The same way, Honorable Speaker, even if it comes to the building bylaws, there are adoptive building bylaws, and there are adoptive building bylaws depending on the local circumstances. Some of the building material that we wish to use in Nairobi cannot be applicable in some places because of the adverse environmental and weather conditions. So these are kind of debate that we need to put into place so that we should not just operate in a straitjacket as if we are robots, unable to think beyond a reasonable level. Honorable Speaker, since CDF came into this country, and I stand to be corrected, and even if we did an opinion poll, everybody will always, every Kenyan, wherever they are, they will always flag out a CDF as the most impactful devolved fund in this country. Honorable Speaker, go anywhere in this country. Honorable Speaker, I had the privilege on Friday to drive all the way from Suna West, all the way to Ndiwa, through Karachonyo, all the way to Kisumu City. And everywhere you would see, the only thing you would see, you will see the signboard for CDF projects. CDF projects. Until at one time, as around Katito, I stopped and asked the locals, does it mean in this part of the world, which looks like the western part where I come from, there are no county governments? All the only county government could see were the barriers along the road to collect cess and illegal levies. They told us that county governments, we only see them hovering around with sirens and carrying special chairs to go with them to sit with them in funerals. Once they are done, they carry those chairs, they go away, load in the pickup, go away, zoom to the next function. But the impact of county government funds, equitable funds, even their own source revenue is nowhere to be seen. That's why I call upon Kenyans of goodwill, wherever you are, you must fight tooth and nail with your blood and water to make sure CDF is never touched at any given time. Because 99%, when your child has got no school fees, who comes to the rescue? Is the CDF bursary. Anytime when the wind blows off a roof to a classroom, where do you run the first point of call? You run to CDF to assist you. When you have even very mundane issues, you run to where do you, even when toilets, when public health officers come and condemn the toilet, where do you run to? You run to CDF. So it is incumbent upon all Kenyans, wherever we are, that at every given time, we must always train our eyes to how the CDF money is used. It's not the MP's money, it is the people's money. So wherever you are, if you walk anywhere and you find anybody talking ill of CDF, even contemplating or imagining that they can abolish CDF, they are abolishing you completely and the entire lineage of your family. We wish that there could be a bit of collaboration between the CDF and the county government. We could have done much, much more than what we are doing. But Honorable Speaker, whatever to small administrative clerical mistakes they are, we urge the Kenyans, we urge the Auditor General to just treat them as they are. They're of no material impact. So therefore, and I also ask the fund managers to consistently ensure that we comply with the law at any given time. So that at any given, the speaker is still busy, so that at any given time, Honorable Speaker, we can get value for money. So Honorable Speaker, as we stand here today, we want to urge the National Board, the CDF Board, the financial year is coming to an end. We have so many CBC classrooms that are stuck. They are not moving because the disbursement has not come. We want them to hasten the disbursement of the funds so that we can put into rapid response measures to ensure these classrooms are completed so that our boys and girls do not have to sit outside as they do their things. Remember, Honorable Speaker, in 2020-26, the current GSS grade 8 after grade 9, they transit to secondary school. And the pathways will require massive investment in terms of art studio, performing studio, science laboratories, and the rest. We must start planning in advance to ensure that we are ready. The only responsive fund that can plan is the CDF. We want to urge all those who have got any infrastructure funds for schools or whichever, channel them through CDF. It will offer better services than giving to technocrats who do not understand the local circumstances. With those very many remarks, Honorable
Just a minute, Honorable Oundo. What is out of order, the Honorable TJ Kajong?
How can it be out of yes, CD?
You know, Mr. Speaker, this good professor will never be out of order, but sometimes he forgets that he's speaking to the nation. Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt my friend, although I saw that he has fairly prosecuted this matter properly. But Mr. Speaker, looking at the House, I would have really wanted members from Vihiga to be here, because although we are speaking about the topic really is about the public expenses and how to audit them by the House. But these are being used by people from Vihiga. And my friend comes from Vihiga. No, he comes from Busia, but he's a neighbor to Vihiga. But how I wish that Vihiga people would be here to debate this more robustly, so that the people of Vihiga as a people can feel that their monies are utilized properly and are audited properly. And even the Auditor General, who is not in this House, you see, there should be annexures that people should understand that this is monies from national government, audited by an independent Auditor General within the law, and brought to this House, inspected by this House, and resolutions taken by this House to oversight those audit queries. So, Mr. Speaker, in that light, would I be in order that in the circumstances that we face, that this House is not quorated to discuss this matter exhaustively, and therefore the Speaker should ring the bell?
Do you have the numbers? Yeah, it is confirmed to me that we are operating below the requisite quorum. I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes. Ring the bell.
Well, the House currently does not have the required quorum for the current business on the floor to continue. This is a matter that has been raised by the Honorable Member for Ruaraka, Honorable TJ Kajwang, indicating to the Speaker, that is Honorable Peter Kaluma, who sits in the Speaker's panel, that the House does not have the required number of members to enable it to continue with the House business. And this is pursuant to the House Standing Order number 35, which talks about the quorum during the proceedings of the House. Before we look at that particular standing order, business on the floor of the House, at the time the Honorable Member raised the lack of quorum issue was a consideration of the motion by the chairperson, Decentralized Funds Accounts Committee. This motion is on the reports of the Auditor General on the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County. And the Honorable Chairperson required the House to adopt that report on its consideration of the financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County for the financial years that include 2013-2014, 2014-2015, and 2015 and 2016. These reports were laid, or rather this report was laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th February, the year 2024. And members were giving their opinions on this particular motion, on this particular issue. Remember, it is an issue that touches on the monies from the national government and the expenditure therewith, and monies that concern constituencies within Vihiga County. But it was on that particular issue that the Honorable Member TJ Kajwang rose to alert the House that the business or the matter that is on the floor of the House concerns members mainly, or would be better if members mainly from that particular county were present in the House, that they will be able to debate exhaustively or extensively on the issues that are being raised on these reports for the financial years indicated. But the concerned members, or the members who hail from that particular county and who may be able to participate deeply or add information with regards to these particular reports, their presence in the House is not there, and hence that necessitated this particular quorum bell. The Speaker indicated that the quorum bell be on for 10 minutes. This is pursuant to the House Standing Order number 35, which indicates that if at any time after the chair is taken, or when the House is in a committee or a member objects that there is not a quorum present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall count the members in the House or the committee, as the case may be. In this case, it is the House, and we have heard the Speaker indicating that the House is operating below the required number of members, and thereby necessitating that a particular quorum bell. So it will be on for 10 minutes. Part 2 of 35 indicates if on the count under paragraph 1, a quorum does not appear to be present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall cause the division bell to be rung as on a division, and if no quorum is present at the expiration of the 10 minutes, which is currently what we are waiting for to see whether the House shall achieve that required number of members at the expiration of the 10 minutes or within, within the 10 minutes when the bell is on. Standing Order 35-2 Part A indicates that if the Speaker is in the chair, the Speaker shall adjourn the House until the next sitting without question put. So that is a pursuant to the House Standing Order number 35. If we continue with that standing order, Part B indicates that if the House is in a committee, the chairperson shall leave the chair and report the fact to the Speaker, who shall adjourn the House until the next sitting. But in this case, it is the House and the Speaker will be able to give a way forward at the expiration of the 10 minutes. This is a quorum bell that is currently underway. It is a quorum bell during the proceeding of the House, which is pursuant to the House Standing Orders, and the business on the floor of the House before this particular quorum bell was with regards to the motion by the chairperson, the Centralized Funds Accounts Committee, a motion on the reports of the Auditor General on the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County. And the chairperson needed the House to adopt that report on its consideration of the financial statements for the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 5 constituencies in Vihiga County. With regards to these financial years, the 2013-2014, 2014-2015, and 2015-2016, that was laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th February, the year 2024. So the quorum bell will be on, but a look at earlier on, the members concluded their debate on the National Disaster Risk Management Bill, a bill that is originating from the National Assembly, Bill number 24 of 2023. This is a bill by the leader of the majority party, a bill that its resumption during today's sitting or this afternoon sitting came after it was interrupted on Thursday, March 21st, the year 2024 in the afternoon sitting. This is a bill that seeks to provide a legal framework for the coordination of disaster risk management activities in both levels of government. Also establish the Intergovernmental Council on Disaster Risk Management and the National Disaster Risk Management Authority to ensure that there is coordination of disaster risk management issues at the national and county level. The National Disaster Risk Management Bill also seeks to establish county disaster risk management committees in each of the counties, as the role of disaster risk management is a shared function between the national and county governments under the 4th schedule to the Constitution. And the bill proposes to bring together the staff of the National Disaster Operations Center, the National Disaster Risk Management Unit, to undertake national disaster risk management. Just to remind you is that the House is currently awaiting to constitute the required number of members inside the chambers during the proceeding of House business. Well, the Speaker is addressing the House. Let's listen in.
Order, honorable members. The time being 6:30 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Thursday, the 11th day of April, 2024 at 2:30 p.m.
Afadhali mzee ambaye ni mtulivu, ambaye hana haja ya kujaza mifuko yake, ambaye atachunga masilahi ya watu yake, badala ya mdomo tamtamu 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 tamtamu. Lakini akiingia ni wale wa kufanya moja yako, nusu ya mwananchi, mbili yako na tano yangu, na unawajua nyinyi.
Kutafuta uongozi kwa kutumia dini au kutumia kabila unagawa watu. Kazi ya uongozi ni kujenga watu wawe kitu kimoja.
The 2.2 billion has been spent in the office of the president and State House between July and September. If you do that calculation, it means that we spend in that office 23 million per day and 1 million per hour. That cannot be sustainable.
Tunaingia vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunakaa kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako.
Nasikia watu wanasema baba ametusaliti. Between baba kutusaliti na sisi kusaliti baba, nani amesaliti mwingine?
Inapeangwa, it mostly goes to foreign ministries. So Baba is overqualified for that position.
To build this railways for Africa. So now he's thinking about tumemkataa kama baba wetu.
Unaweza kuwa kuna mtoto ulizaa ukapatia nchi ikuwa inamfanya vile inataka.
Uhuru has been working very hard. Ruto akaenda huko na nguvu. Ruto was never invited in the inauguration.
Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye Soundcard Talk.
Open Forum Political Discussion Show, the show that gives you an opportunity to air what you feel and think about the latest development.
Tukutane Soundcard Talk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are glad you're watching. Thank you so much for making time to join us. This is Sound Candid Talk, Open Forum Political Discussion Show, the show that gives you an opportunity to air what you feel and think about the latest development on our political front. Well, one businessman, an industrialist by the name Narendra Raval, an investor for that matter, has voiced out his wishes about the William Ruto presidency. And in his wish list, he said what I believe majority of Kenyans may not agree with him. and that is that he wishes that William Ruto should be president for at least 25 years. Now, I don't know whether Kenya has enemies, but if these are the friends of Kenya, we don't need enemies again. I think from the look of things, right across education, agriculture, healthcare, life in general, if this is what one wishes for Kenya for 25 years, then we are doomed. Well, I'm calling upon you to voice out what you think about this entire situation. I salute each one of you as you join. We begin once again with an apology. Our main channel has been striked again because of State House content. That's all I can say on that. But I think we will have to do with this in the meantime until we are able to stream on the main channel. So please tell everyone else we are on the backup channel, Sound Candid Talk Live, and everyone should subscribe to this particular channel as our hideout whenever we are attacked on the other side. So please, we encourage us as much as it is disheartening and heartbreaking. There are things we have to learn to live with. And so I just encourage you, please remind others that we are on Sound Candid Talk Live YouTube channel, Sound Candid Talk Facebook page, Sound Candid Talk X handle, as well as TikTok. Thank you for the TikTokers. Appreciate you for joining us. And we call you for full participation into the show, even as we start out. So please, wherever you are, whatever you are up to, we want to dive into this great discussion. Remember, Agriculture CS Linturi denies the presence of fake fertilizer, even after Gachagua and Ruto himself acknowledging and committing to compensate farmers for the fake fertilizer. So what is happening in our country? We'll need you to tell us more about the same. And then, of course, the doctors' strike is on. The Nyeri governor threatening to sack the doctors if they don't resume duties. And it's James Orengo and team support the doctors' strike. So it appears in the governors, we have a division, those in support and those against. And Kenyans are the ones at pains at this point in time. So please, let's be active. Let's share the link, share the link, please. And let's join into the discourse. This country, my God, I don't know. If somebody can imagine that he wants William Ruto for 25 years as president, and that same person is an industrialist, an investor in this country, after over 44 companies winding up and leaving because of the William Ruto policies, then it goes without saying that this Raval man needs to be investigated and be told what does he eat with Ruto and how does he profit from the Ruto presidents when everybody's at pains and Kenya as a whole is on the winding path about almost everything that was running smoothly when Uhuru Kenyatta was president. What is going on? Is it that these industrialists are the ones in charge of this country and are enjoying while Kenyans are suffering? Let's talk. I salute Msimamo, karibu kwa show, asante sana. Freedom, karibu kwa show, na kushukuru kwa kuwa hapa. Evelyn Nyambongi, hey, Nyambongi, a complicated name, huh? Thank you so much. Boss Lady, karibu kwa show. Na mmesema tafadhali karibisha wengine, wakumbushe tuko huku, tumejificha huku. huko kwingine kumefungwa until further notice. So tafadhali kumbusha watu tuko kwa backup channel, or those of you who follow us on YouTube. And of course, we really want to appreciate every one of you for your faithful support. Freedom anasema there is no way Kenya will accept Zakayo to rule for 25 years. Kenya will ban, the Kenyans will ban the country. Haya, maoni yake Freedom hayo. Tuni Mhamud, karibu kwa show. Asante sana kwa kuwa hapa. PK, karibu kwa show. Asante sana. Salome Amashibo, karibu kwa show. Asante sana kwa kuwa hapa. Nani huyu? Ruto Tawe. Vanavefwe. Ruto. Ruto ni msiba kwa taifa zima. Haya, huyo ni dada yetu huyo, anasema hapa hapana. Hii ayendi. Well, Kenyans, let's engage, let's talk, let's make sure that we do what we must do. Ruto ni msiba kwa taifa zima. Huyo ni dada yetu huyo. Nakwambia hapa ni mambo. Naomba tafadhali tumakinike, tukaribishane, tufuate ratiba. Kumbusha watu kwamba tunapatikana YouTube, tunapatikana wapi? Kwa Triumphant Bible Media, na pia tunapatikana kwa Sound Candy Talk Live. The Sound Candy Talk channel is under another attack, so we will not be able to stream there for a period of time. So we would like to encourage everybody to join us on this backup channel. Naomba tafadhali pia tukue na discipline wakati tunaongea, tukubali kwamba tunaongelesha umma na tukue responsible katika matamshi yetu na katika mazungumzo, kwa sababu cha muhimu hapa ni kuokoa Kenya wala sio kuongea tu. So naomba tafadhali tumakinike, ndio tusiwe na hizi stories za kupigwa kila siku. Lakini cha muhimu, tutasimamia haki, tutasimamia ukweli, na tunaamini katika Kenya ya usawa, Kenya ya kila Mkenya, na kuna lolote ambalo litasemwa ama litafanywa litakalotubadilisha. Kwangu mimi najua Kenya ya kila Mkenya inawezekana, na hiyo ndio Kenya ya pekee ambayo itafanya kazi. Hizi Kenya zingine zote mnaniambia kwamba mara turuhusu hiki na kile, hiki na kile, mimi sioni ikifanya kazi. Kwa hivyo kwangu mimi bado naamini kwamba Kenya for all Kenyans is the only Kenya that will work, and each responsible Kenya should stand for that Kenya for all Kenyans. The Kenya of regions has not worked. The Kenya of class has not worked. The Kenya of those who have has not worked. We need a Kenya for all Kenyans. And that Kenya is only possible when we all rally together and say enough is enough. We cannot continue like this. So asante sana kwa wote ambao mnajiunga nasi. Tuendelee kukaribishana, share hiyo link na kila mtu katika maisha yako wajiunge nasi. Wakumbushe kwamba tunapatikana kwa backup channel. Hapa ndipo tumejificha kwa sasa hivi mpaka wakati tutaweza kurejea kwa ile main channel. Na tunaomba tu tafadhali tushirikiane kwa pamoja, tutekeleze wajibu wetu kama Wakenya wazalendo. Mambo mengi yanaendelea katika nchi hii, na tunaamini kwamba ni kwa uwezo wa Mungu tu tutakavyoweza kukomboa nchi hii na kuiweka katika njia iliyo sawa. Sasa hivi ni kama nchi imetekwa nyara, na kile kinachoendelea naamini kwamba si haki hata kabisa. Haya, tusikilize haya huyu jamaa kwanza, ndio msimama naye akatuambie msimamo wake kwa mambo haya. Huyu sijui namwita mgeni Mkenya, sielewi mimi.
Well, tonight, in remarks that could trigger a political storm in the coming days, businessman Narendra Raval has expressed his wishes for President William Ruto to be in office for at least 25 years. The remark touches on the sensitive question of presidential term limit that have been in force in Kenya for 30 years now. Now, his comments renewing similar calls on a core constitutional subject since President Ruto's administration came to office could prompt a debate on an issue granted constitutional guarantee. Here's Aiba Abdikadir with more.
It was in the remote interior of West Pokot County that affluent businessman Narendra Raval hosted President William Ruto for the opening of Clinker Cement Factory. In his welcoming remarks, Raval poured praise on President William Ruto in colorful prose that spilled over into a rather controversial constitutional space.
Rais yetu iko hapa na iko na furaha. Liko anashindwa na hiyo weather, lakini mzee kushajaribu sababu ya nini kukuja hapa hata na barabara. He loves us so much, he loves this country so much that especially myself, I have no words to say thank you to him. God gives him 100 years of life. I wish that we have this president for at least for 25 years. No, mali angini iko miaka mingi sana. So if we have this ichi itabadlisha.
Presidential term limits in Kenya are a controversial subject, with the struggle for reforms in Kenya for decades revolving around the quest to introduce term limits for the president, a struggle that bore fruit in 1991 when the contentious Section 2A of then Constitution was repealed, paving the way for the reintroduction of multi-party system of governance in 1992. Subsequent pre-election reforms introduced a 5-year term limit for the president, a practice that has been there for the last 30 years. But in a remark that could well be inadvertent, businessman Raval appears to have triggered a constitutional quarrel, a sentiment that got an immediate backing from lawmaker David Kosing.
Mheshimiwa Kachapin yuko pale Kapenguria, lakini ile wapokoti mpaka Sudan, mpaka Baringo, tiati wanajua. No, najua Excellency, I don't want to explain more that. But what has happened, kwa sababu ya wazungu sijui wameenda wapi, hakuna mtu anasaidia hiyo hospitali. Your Excellency, if you take over that one, hata Mungu atasaidia wewe na utaishi. Na mimi nafikiri hiyo sio mwaka 25, waje tubadilishe katiba. Waje tubadilishe katiba. Kwani kwa nini? Bwana asifiwe.
Their remarks rekindling Fafi constituency lawmaker Salah Yakub's similar remarks in November 2022, calling for the scrapping of presidential term limit, setting an age limit of 75 years, a proposal that fizzled out ever since. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from the horse's mouth, the wishes and the prayers of some Kenyans about the route of presidents, what they are profiting from the same and why they would wish that to happen is what I would love us to engage over. So karibu sana kila mmoja, naomba tumakinike katika kukaribishana. Kumbuka kwamba tunapatikana kwa Sound Candy Talk live. So ukisearch ma ukitaka kufuata kwa YouTube is Sound Candy Talk live. Tafadhali na kuomba makinika katika kupata haya matangazo moja kwa moja, na naomba wale wote tunaingia studio tuingie, tusichelewe. Wale ambao wanatutafuta hiyo sehemu nyingine hatupatikani, wakumbushe tafadhali kwamba tunapatikana kwa Sound Candy Talk live YouTube channel na Sound Candy Talk Facebook page, and then of course X as well as TikTok. Tumakinike katika kukaribishana na TikTok, share your live, watu wengi tu wakuje wakajifunze katika maongezi ya Wakenya hawa. Swali tunalouliza kwa poll question ni, do you support Raval for Ruto to be a life president? Do you support Raval for Ruto to be a life president? 20 votes already cast and all of them say no, 100%. So tuendelee kupiga hiyo kura hapo kwa YouTube, tukangamue mbivu na mbichi ya mambo haya. Kwangu mimi nashindwa kuelewa kabisa. Kama masomo haendi, agriculture ndio hiyo. Madaktari wao wako kwa strike, hospitali ifanye kazi, madawa infrastructure ndio hiyo imekwama. Alafu an industrialist anapendwa sana na Ruto na anapenda Ruto sana, anasema Ruto aendelee for 25 years. What is your take on the same? Karibu kwa show na kuomba tafadhali sky mbali, hapa ndipo story nzima inapatikana. Calling upon everyone, let's join please, and let's share the link widely. Share the link widely so that everybody can find and be part of this great conversation. Those coming into the studio, here is the link. And like I said, we are live on several platforms. X, there we have viewers there. Thank you so much. Facebook, we have very few. Facebook mnatu let down. Haswa Facebook page, tafadhali jitahidini huko muka ingize wengi wakatazame kipindi hiki na wajifunze moja au nyingine. TikTok tunaendelea vizuri, naona likes pia zinapanda. TikTok hizo likes ifike kule zinapaswa kufika. We only have 99 likes. Can we take them to 1,000 plus? TikTokers, you know, there is no limit to how many likes you can give. So please, let's be active there. Kuhakikisha kwamba una share your live na unakaribisha mtu. Na kama unataka kusema ya kwako, una request utaongeza kwa screen alafu useme ya kwako. Kama una support Ruto for 25 years ama unakataa, kama wewe Mkenya mzalendo, unaona hii serikali ya Ruto ndio serikali ama ni nini? Mbona huyu mwanabiashara anasema Ruto tosha for 25 years? Hey, I can't even dream that or imagine that. But I don't know. You will let me know. You will let me know. But from where I sit, this is terrible. Okay, Freedom anasema, have you seen how Ruto did to Rai? Okay. Huyu Muhindi ametishiwa, amelazimishwa kusema hivyo. Haya, wewe maoni ya Freedom, anasema huyu ameambiwa asiposema hivyo basi industry itafungwa. Probably. Well, let's engage. And then, of course, I want you to know that the person supporting the 25 years is the West Pokot member of parliament of that particular region. And West Pokot and bandits and insecurity are inseparable. I mean, that has been a problem all along. And then, of course, there is still a drumming up for UDA in the place and support for William Ruto. So I fail to understand. Why do we push for failure? Why do we support what is unacceptable? Why should we support what is not working to be the order of the day when we really have competent people in this country that can run the affairs of this country? What is this that is happening in Kenya? Do we have to do with mediocres because the society cannot appreciate excellence and the society cannot take it in when we have strong, competent, able leaders? What is it with Kenya that we want mediocrity, we fought for mediocrity, we push for mediocrity at all, at all costs? Why should that be the case? We have competent people in this country. They have proven themselves in various ministries to be people that can deliver. Why do we forget all that and begin to play with this political mediocrity approach where we push for something that we know is not working? It has not worked. It has proven it can't work. And then you say, this is the way to go for 25 years. Is that not madness? Is that not a sickness is that not to lose it altogether? I mean, can you imagine? We have gone from what? In less than 2 years, we are worse off than we have ever been in our history. And then you tell me that you want this same leadership to be perpetuated for 25 years. Are you okay? Well, I need to hear what you say, what you think about this entire scenario. Tafadhali tuendelee kukaribishana, karibisha mtu. Mimi hapa inauma sana kwa kuwa from the fact that somebody in his mature age bracket thinks that and believes that we can get better off with Ruto presidents when he has proven in his first year and a few months that nothing can survive in his hands. Are you still aware that we have over 150,000, almost 300,000 children that did not make it to school? Right now, doctors on strike and there is no forthcoming solution from the same administration. Agriculture is faced with all manner of scandal, fake fertilizer. The minister says there is no fake fertilizer. Ruto says there is fake fertilizer. Says there is 50,000 distributed bags of fake fertilizer. Linturi says there has never been fake fertilizer. Who is fooling who? And you tell me that is an administration you want for 25 years. This country will not be a country anymore. Well, let's engage even as we continue. Please invite somebody as we engage. I believe Kenyans have a solution to all these. Kenyans have a right to speak up over this, and therefore nobody should be pushed to a corner to accept the unacceptable, support what needs to be resisted, and then, of course, forge for what should not. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Sound Candid Talk, open forum political discussion show. Karibu kila moja, tafadhali makinika as we debate and engage as Kenyans. Let's be forthright. Let's speak up. Let's refuse to be carried as fools. This is not a country where we are experimenting. We have had an administration that has worked. We have had administrations that have not worked. It is clear this one is not working. Why would anybody be forging for the same? Why would anybody be saying this is the way to go? Karibu kwa show kila moja, naomba umakinike, hakikisha kwamba unakumbusha mtu kwamba hatupatikani kwa Sound Candid Talk main channel, tunapatikana kwa Sound Candid Talk live YouTube channel kwa wale ambao lazima watufuate kwa YouTube. Facebook ni ile ile Sound Candid Talk Facebook page, as well as Ngozi M. Bernard Facebook page and profile at the same time. So Facebookers tuko na nafasi nyingi tu ya kupatikana, kwa hivyo tutafute hapo utatupata. Na kama upate Sound Candid Talk live, tafuta Triumphant Bible Media, pia hapo feed iko pale as an extension of this particular broadcast. So don't be stranded in your pursuit of finding this show and then, of course, getting an opportunity to participate in what is happening.
Tunaingia vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunakaa kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako.
Nasikia watu wanasema baba ametusaliti. Between baba kutusaliti na sisi kusaliti baba, nani amesaliti mwingine?
Inapeangwa, it mostly goes to foreign ministries. So Baba is overqualified for that position.
To build this railways for Africa. So now he's thinking about tumemkataa kama baba wetu.
Unaweza kuwa kuna mtoto ulizaa ukapatia nchi ikuwa inamfanya vile inataka.
Uhuru has been working very hard. Ruto akaenda huko na nguvu. Ruto was never invited in the inauguration.
Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye Sound Candid Talk.
Open Forum Political Discussion Show. The show that gives you an opportunity to air what you feel and think about the latest development.
Tukutane Sound Candid Talk.